Sage, cool, awesome. Go ahead and just Slack me your code, and we will make it happen.
You can also join
Oh yeah, that would be easier. If you guys just pulled up on your
like
laptop,
this, it looks like
yeah.
This size. Great. I was literally just doing the same thing. Like, it looks fine if we do it.
Oh, I'm gonna send you a link to join this call so that you can share it
Oh my
that
gosh.
way.
I fixed it. How did I do that? There was white space around before. Never mind. I mean, still the bottom side.
tell me how you fixed it, because I couldn't figure it out.
Try doing that one. Sorry, remind me your name.
Oh, Dawn. So fine on this side, but
I'll share that in there, and I'll stop sharing my screen for now. And just like last time, just talk us through what you built, what the hardest part was, how you overcame it, and then the part that you're most proud of. It'll probably have you download a thing, do that. While they're pulling that up, I know the rest of you guys did work on some homework. Go ahead and be thinking through, what did you get stuck on? What was extra? What do you want to learn more about? Since this is, sad day, our last class officially. So what topics do you want to cover today? So just go ahead and add it to this. 46 people, wow. Should have done that here. Yeah, so just go ahead and hop in here, toss it in the thread. This can be like, how to name CSS, how to use Flexbox, play around with it, whatever it might be. Are you guys ready?
It's trying to connect to the meeting.
Ah, okay, classic.
I'm on here if you want me to jump on real quick.
Sure, yeah.
I'm kind of curious to see how it's going to work with the different.
Me too. Go for it. You should just have that green toolbar at the bottom when you hover over it, and then you should be able to share your whole desktop. Right, beautiful. Don't forget to bump that up, and feel free to, just go ahead and talk.
You try clicking the link again.
Here. I was thinking it was going to come up on the screens up there. Okay.
That's okay, but on the
You pull up in your window.
my window.
Are you even logged into the Zoom call?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then I think if you pull up your Zoom call and he shared with you, we should see it. Maybe? I don't know. We're all learning.
Wait, I think I know.
What happened to the? Yeah, well, I already had it, but
Okay. Technology people. Okay. Take it away.
So here's the one that I decided to do.
oh, there it is.
It's not coming out. Technology people.
What are you trying to do?
Well, it's just sharing. There we go. So now it should change over.
Oh, nice. This is your site?
Yeah, this is
Hot dang.
this is the junk that I was playing with.
We're on the path.
Now to figure out how to get it to do it without having that overlay. Try this again.
Oh.
What's that?
I was trying to get the.
Oh, don't worry about it. We can't even see that. Oh, it's blocking something?
Yeah.
Oh, if you go hover over it, then
Yeah.
try clicking on
Well,
it brings over, put down a little bit. Yeah, see that one?
Are you sharing the desktop or just the Chrome?
so screen.
Yeah, stop sharing.
Yeah, let's do it just the browser. Okay, well,
So hit stop sharing. And then do share screen again. And then do
Is that what you did before?
I had this one and I had.
Yeah, that'll be your whole screen, like every window. So let me do that one.
Yeah, that's what I had earlier, but now that, yeah, see
It's okay. Go ahead and just talk through like what the most challenging part was, the part you learned the most that you're most proud of.
Okay. Well, the website doesn't, or the way this was built is not the way Disney built it, of course. Looking at their source, it was horrible. Because everything's being fed to it from dynamically from a server. But I created the fake login.
Oh, nice.
And that's pretty much all I did extra was the login screen.
That's so cool. So what was the most challenging part to build from all this? There's a lot.
Most challenging part was trying to find where things would start and where things would end, because like the little border across the bottom had to be at the very bottom of the screen no matter what the resolution of the screen.
Right.
And everything, I mean, I tried to make sure that everything lined up as I scrolled up, everything lined up the same way it did on their side.
Yeah.
As far as this last line was at the bottom of the screen, no matter what browser I was in, whenever I scrolled up. I used the view height property and then used a calc. So like that bottom.
Subtract it a little bit from the bottom. Nice.
To pull that up.
That's cool.
I also used little jQuery for the button.
Did you use Flexbox for the layout? Did you use Bootstrap?
I used Flexbox. I didn't use Bootstrap on it. The only thing extra that I added was the jQuery.
Great work. Cool. Give him a hand. That's awesome. I feel like I want to sign up and curl up on a couch at home already. Dalton, Sage, when are you guys ready to take over and share your screen?
Sure.
All right, go ahead and just hit the green button, share your whole desktop, and then just talk us through the biggest challenge, how you got through it, thing you're most proud of, anything else you think is cool.
Okay, so it's like a website from just a local business here.
They are so cool.
And yeah, they have a pretty good store. And so this is the original site. And so my biggest obstacle was the nav bar.
The nav bar?
Yeah, and I still haven't nailed it. I've got my pieces where they need to be. I've got like I said, the font and everything fixed where it doesn't have M1 and all that. No matter what I tried, I could not get everything where it needed to be. And later I discovered inspecting their code that they did everything separately as opposed to online. So I had to restructure everything, and I didn't end up getting to it in time. But I did get my image centered, which was
beautiful,
quite an achievement after a couple hours researching that.
It looks great.
Getting some text there. Yeah, I would say definitely the flex aspect for me. I couldn't figure out the right combination for that.
That's a real common thing, right? It's like, oh, I know I want to do this way. I want to use Flex, and then you'd use Flex, and Flex doesn't work. Well, why does it work? Well, because you got to change your HTML, and then that enables you to do the right thing. So going that back and forth, like this is a pattern you'll see in programming all the time. Some people call it like red-green, which is where like I deliberately want to break my code and then fix my code and then change something else and then fix it again. So what you're doing is like what pretty much every good programmer does. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I did this one, and then I also did a Google page as well.
Awesome, yeah.
And again, it was the same issue. I don't even know if it's worth showing to you. It's basically I got the
If you just find the file and double click it too, you don't have to use live server. It should still pull it up just fine.
Okay. Actually, that's an issue I've noticed that I have a lot, is that when I'm trying to open the CSS along with another file in the virtual code, that it doesn't open both of them. Like I have to go into a file to open it.
Yeah. That's why I try and separate stuff by folders. Yeah, because generally you want one folder for only that project. Because if you mix and match multiple things, it'll get confused. You'll think it's all one project. Real common.
Well, yeah. So like I said, that was basically what I done.
Awesome. This is great. Cool. Anything else you think is cool or important that you picked up and learned while you were building this?
Yeah, actually the inline versus block regarding flex, that was like a huge deal. And then also I really like the aspect of the space between and the space around, all those different variations that you could use. Like I said, I got some of it to work when I was playing around with it. It just wasn't obviously to the iteration of it. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Sweet. Any questions anyone has about Dalton's site and how he got what he got? Nope, absorbed it all. Beautiful. We'll give him a hand. You are killing it. You're all professional web designers, and I dig that a lot. Sage, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's go.
Okay. So. I shared your desktop one.
Yeah, just show your whole desktop.
It's asking me to grant access. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Zoom is a fickle beast.
I thought I was ready to go.
That's okay. You got it.
Okay, there we go.
Beautiful.
Okay, so I did. This is not my site, just fair warning. So the Met. So one thing that I've really grown to appreciate websites, obviously building them and realizing that it's incredibly hard, but the responsiveness of this site is absolutely incredible. So that's what I try to emulate a lot, was especially within these, how the image alternates with the actual content as you scroll down, but then when you change the window, it goes to more of a column style. So couldn't do that. I'll get to be able to where I can do that. But anyway, so that was incredible. This is my site. Did the little hover, loved figuring out how to do that, the little hover over stuff. And then same, so I divided mine up with Flexbox, but I will get to where I flop them, and I know how to conceptually, but still, yeah, that was a lot of fun to do, going down. And anyway, I need to change this bar here. But yeah, Flexbox made this, like you said, infinitely easier to look at. But honestly, I think my favorite thing in designing this was the filter aspect of this back image, because this image is really bright, so you couldn't see the text.
Want to show us the code for that really
Yeah,
quick?
for sure.
Because that's something we haven't covered in class, but I'm guessing you looked that up.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, walk us through how you
driving
found that and how you built that.
You got it. So
Don't use .css. I like that.
yeah, I was confusing myself. That's one thing I'm also excited to do, is like name my stuff properly. I'm still getting the hang of like what won't confuse me.
Sure.
So this was so yeah, this filter brightness right here. So if you see how bright that is, and that was driving me crazy. I thought I was just gonna leave it, but I couldn't. So I did the filter brightness, and it makes it much more readable. So that, I was stoked about that. Super simple, but I loved figuring that out.
Yeah, this is some newer CSS stuff you've added. You can like make a photo black and white without actually saving a new photo. You can do all kinds of crazy crops. You can do blurs. There's a lot of neat stuff where normally you need like Photoshop to do something like that, right? Grab the photo, save it, put on a layer, darken it, but you can do it right with CSS. And the cool thing about that as well is you could actually, in theory, like change this, right? You could be like, randomize it so that half the time it's red and half the time it's blue and half the time it's, or you could do whenever you move your mouse, like make a little gradient rainbow. There's so much cool stuff you can do that you couldn't do with Photoshop. So that's awesome. I'm glad you found that.
Yeah, and I'm just so excited to learn how to use JavaScript and stuff too, because everything I looked at, like these scroll things, these scroll tabs, it was all JavaScript, so couldn't do any of that, but I got to. So anyway, I'm excited for what we're gonna cover in the future.
Thanks, yeah, dude, that's awesome. Anyone have questions for Sage about how he built something that he built? Cool, awesome. Well, we'll cover a lot of that. Good job, Sage. Good. Very cool. Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah, if you stop sharing your screen, I think I can take back over. I think there's like maybe if you hit the green thing
Stop.
again and stop.
Yep.
Yeah,
Sorry.
how do you stop sharing? I can pick that up.
Oh, that big one that says stop share. Thank you.
Somewhere. Cool. All right. Cool. So this is our last OK Coders class. So I wanted to make sure we covered more stuff. We have a lot of stuff we still haven't covered that I'd like to cover before we get into your guys' next module with JavaScript. So I've tried to give you guys a lot of like code along time and things like that. I think I'm going to try and front load this class to where I'm showing you a little bit more and then hopefully giving us a nice block at the end to mix all this stuff together and practice together. Because we have things like how do we make things look different on phones and desktops? How do we use relative, absolute, and fixed positioning? Like if we need to stick something on the top. You guys have been hopefully learning with, how many of you guys watch the Flexbox videos? At least a couple of them. A lot of you guys, awesome. Was that helpful? Was that interesting? Cool, awesome. So you guys picked up a little bit of that. Hopefully we'll be using it more today. I'll do a little bit of it, but we probably won't be like approaching it from scratch because you can watch that course for free on how to do it. I want to maximize your time here. We're going to cover Bootstrap. Basically, monster truck rally.
Bootstrap, which is bringing in these components. Okay.
Oh, wait, just because
Oh, that was me, I'm sorry.
Oh, that was you? No, okay. Is that better now? Okay. Wow. Okay. Which is bringing in like a framework to help you do a lot of the things you've been doing, but a little bit faster, a little bit more pre-made components. So you can build out a whole application or website in less time. And then if we get time at the end, we're going to bring it all together and like create a little fake Instagram layout. Anything else that you guys want to be able to do that came up in your homework? Looks like we didn't put any. Okay, we got background images and getting nav bar and buttons over it. Great. Yeah, we can do some of that here with this. So good job, Natalia. Thank you for sharing that. We will cover background images and getting nav bar and buttons over it. Kind of different ways. Anything else? Last class. No? What was it? Netlify. Oh, yeah, good one. Where can we do that? Do that at the end. Launch your site for free with Netlify. We'll make sure and throw that in. Beautiful. Okay. We were doing some stuff. Let's roll. So we're going to go in. What do we want to do here? Not you. Okay, so fixed and relative positioning. So I'm gonna pull a little bit from the docs so that you guys know where to go and find this stuff. So again, we're in the GitHub repo going into this HTML module, and let's go into CSS. Kind of review a little bit of a couple positioning things that we haven't covered. The reason I haven't covered them as heavily is because you probably won't use them as much as you will flex and understanding basic grouping in the box model and like inline versus block. Like you're going to use that stuff way more most of the time, but there are certain things, specialized things where you will need to use more of this absolute fixed or sticky positioning. And so I want to make sure you guys know where to dive into it, but these are not like your bread and butter. You're not using this 24/7, 365. This is more like a specialized tool you break out for specialized situations. So let me show you a few quick examples of like where I've used something like this. Where's like a good, so we're going to use like, we're going to cover Netlify later. Notice how this bar, like even if well, it's not, okay. Imagine this bar was like sticking to the top. I thought it would, because normally when people do bars like this, they just kind of stick.
So I did a website where the top bar sticks.
Yeah.
Simple Bank, if you need.
Oh, Simple does it?
Yeah.
Cool. That's my bank. My boys. Okay, yeah. So see how this like nav bar is sticking up to the top even as we scroll down? The way that we're doing that, probably one of the ways to do that is by using the CSS property where we're just saying, hey, fix it to the top, and wherever I scroll, wherever I go, like keep it in the same spot on my browser, which is really helpful. Maybe you've seen like a little email thing at the bottom, and we want people to be able to like click on it and enter their email, but we wanted to follow the user. We could do that too. We could have something like this. So that's like fixed stuff, and we're gonna cover how to do that really quick. What about another thing where we have like this little badge here? Notice like even if you, this is something I coded with some like cards, right? And we have this little guy that's floating off and kind of in the middle, and it's overlapping with these guys, right? This isn't normally like a box model thing, right? Because we have like an element here, we have an element here, and then we have one that's straddling or overlapping, which looks really cool. But we haven't really learned how to do that, because we know how to like get the box up top, the box at bottom, we know how to do that, but then how do you get something that is like overlapping on top of those things? And it's a combination of things that we're gonna cover here in a moment. So let's go ahead and let's create a new doc. So I'm gonna go into here. Let's go ahead and open up our 2020 web dev folder. I'm gonna open up all our folders here, and let's go ahead and go into hello world. Let's go into this, I'll go into this. I'm just gonna make a new folder here, which is just examples. And then I'm gonna create a new line in here that is, let's do relative positioning. It's going to be a little bit more than relative positioning, but I'm not letting me see both of those right now. Index.html. Interesting. Okay, there's a folder. And we got our index.html. Cool, so we'll do this really quick. So we'll do HTML5, just pop something up like this. We just want our HTML tag, our head tag, our title. We'll call this relative, and we'll say h1, let's get relative. Make this a little bigger too. Okay, and then let's try popping on our live server and see if that works. And cool, we got it here. So again, it doesn't matter what folder you put this in, make sure you pop open live folder so it can see all your good stuff. Hit go live, make sure we have that here. And then just for the sake of this and making it easy for you guys to find, I'll pop up into style tag here. I'll say body, background, color red to make sure that this is working, and it is. So not going to be using that. I'm just going to do this so it's easy for us all to work in one file and so that you guys can see it. But let's do this. So, okay. Let's cover fixed first, because what we've been covering so far is box model, right? You have like one box stacked on another box, stacked on another box, or we've covered inline. You have stuff that is side by side and doesn't really take up the same amount of space, which is all well and good. What we're going to cover now is something that breaks the box model, and that's why I've kind of tried to push these up a little bit. because these aren't things that you want to use 24/7 all the time. These are more specialized things, like I was saying. And so we want to be very, very careful with these, because everything we've done before, whatever block elements you have, they behave in a very predictable way because they stack on top of each other and they take up the full width. They have very predictable rules. When we use a relative element, when we use fixed, when we use absolute and sticky, they deliberately break all the rules that we're doing. They don't follow the flow of the box model. They stay outside of it, and that's on purpose. But if you forget that you've done it, if you add a property that you didn't mean to, if it's really easy to get disoriented and lost and not understand why other stuff is breaking. It's really easy to break other stuff that's not, you thought you weren't breaking. So we want to be really careful with that as we're doing it. So let's take a peek at, what can we do with this? I'm going to go ahead and create a little, let's just call this container. Trusty old buddy there. And then maybe let's just call this classroom, and then in our style, we'll go ahead and put container. Let's say background color, like salmon, sure. And then we'll say classroom. Let's do that. Then let's say width 100%, and then let's say height will be 600, 800 pixels. Classroom will be width of 3%, and then height of 200 pixels. And there we go. And didn't put this inside of it. Sweet. And let's just make this a little easy to see. Color, white, font, 800. Okay, so we can kind of see what's up. Cool. Okay, so now we have our little thing here. So you can see if we open up our dev tools, we have our container, and you can see that in the salmon color. You can see our little like classroom. Let's say it's kind of like the layout of this building, right? And we have that inside of it. So what if, like by default, it's just following the box model, right? This one right here is taking up the full left to right space because it's a div, it's a block level element. And then container is also taking up the full left to right space. And this one is inside of it. Pretty straightforward, makes a lot of sense. Let's actually create like one more classroom on top of this. Also a good learning time. Okay, and you can see if we have another one, it just stacks right on top of it, right? If we did this, we expect it to keep stacking top to bottom, top to bottom, top to bottom. Now, what happens if we go ahead and take this classroom or this container, and by default, like if we look at the container, it's going to be basically a display block. You can see it's inheriting from this div. What if we take it and we change that display? So if we say display, and you can see we have different options. We can make it flex, we can make it grid, we can make it inline. What we want to do is go ahead and make that relative. Okay, so nothing's really going to change right off the bat. And that's because like the way relative works, like it's pretty straightforward, and that like it's basically saying relative by default kind of stays in the document, and other elements can run into it as if it was in its normal location, but it's actually not in its new location, right? It's like relative to something else. By default, if like there's no other thing that's relative in your document, it picks the entire document. It's like, okay, I'm relative to that. And by default, it's going to be like top left and top right. Uh-oh, looks like did I spell this wrong? Display relative. Position relative. What am I doing? Position. Well, no wonder it was normal. It was normal. Well, it still looks normal. But now you can see, yep, position relative. Stuff is happening. So by default, it's going to be like top 0, and it's going to be left 0. But if we start playing with this, I wonder if this will actually do anything. Yep, there we go. So you can see how it's actually going down from the top. And then over here, it's going over from the left. So what it is like it's relatively, by default, when you make something relative, it's going to find the parent most relative thing it can and attach itself to the top left. And then if it can't find any other relative thing, it says, well, I'll just attach myself to the entire document and put myself in the top left. And then the way that relative and absolute positioning works is you basically give it a top property and a left property, or you could make that that's the default. Or you can make it a right property, and they'll go from that. Or if instead of top, I say I want bottom, it'll go up from the bottom. You can see now it's moving up that way. And that's how it works, right? And the interesting thing about this as well is like once you have like a relative as a container, you can absolutely position things inside of it off of that. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's say that we're going to ignore this right now, make it just as it was. But let's go to our classroom. And let's make the position of our classroom's position absolute and see what happens. Okay, so you remember what happened before, right? That they were both stacked on top of each other. So like no absolute, block model, stack, stack. Make it absolute, boom, they just all, and look, they're even overlapping on each other because they're both there. You can see it's, this one's there, this one's there. They're both literally there. But our let's get relative one is buried underneath the other one. Isn't that super weird? And what's happening here is when you make something absolute, again, it's going to float to the top left of whatever relative box you put it inside of. If it can't find a relative box, which again, we don't have any right now, we turned it off here, remember, it's going to go to the top left of your entire stinking document and just pin itself to the top left. Now that's by default, top left. That's what it likes to do. You can also say right, and it'll go right. I can say bottom, and it'll go bottom. And I can pin it from whatever side of that document or relative box I like. And then we can offset it by this, right? And this is kind of how you would do some stuff like that. But then that doesn't solve the problem of the things overlapping, right? This is a weird thing we haven't run into before because prior to now, we haven't, because of the box model, actually been able to make things overlap with each other unless we busted them out of their box, which we try not to do, right? If you have like a little bit of text and then you like force it to be really big and then force the box it's in to be really small, you can get a similar thing where it overflows. But this is like a similar thing where it's like, imagine we have a deck of cards and like the card on the bottom is its relative something. I forgot what I said already. And then the one on top is also a good learn time. You can kind of imagine that like it's a good learn time is resting on top of it and hiding the other one, right? So there is actually a way that we can expose this, but we'll need a way to grab onto each one. So let's call this one wave, because we have the wave emoji there. Let's call this one teacher. That way we have a class to grab onto each one of those. And I'll just add those here. Wave, teacher. And there's a new property that we're going to learn about, which is z-index. So z-index, I'm going to set this one to 0 for wave. Actually, I want that one to be over here. So let's, by default, the z-index for everything, I believe, is 0. It's like 0 or 1, and which just means like, hey, this is at the, if you think about like other things we've been doing in 2 dimensions, z-index is the 3rd dimension. It allows you to take an element and overlap it or put it in front of another element or put it behind another one. So if we take this, you notice right now like the wave card is in the back, this other one, this teacher one is in front. If we make the z-index of wave higher, it's going to come up above to the top, and if we make it lower, it's going to go behind. And we can do this with as many elements as we like. And so actually, let's go ahead and like overlap these a little bit. Say top, so like 10 pixels. Oh, well, it's there. It's just really hard to see. Wow. Okay. Background. What can I do here? Let's do. Okay. So you can kind of see it now. It's to the left. 50 pixels, make it stick out. Okay, so can you guys see that a little bit? You see where they're overlapping? So again, what's happening here is I like on top, on bottom, on top, on bottom. And so we could have as many of these as we like, and like we could literally overflow and overlap them in whatever order we like by using a combination of position this one a little bit more to the right, a little bit more down, a little bit forward with Z index, a little bit back with Z index, and we could do this however we like. Makes sense? What questions do you guys have about that? I've just thrown a lot of weird stuff at you. Cool. Some complications with this. Absolute will literally do this. It does not care about your device size. This is one of the biggest problems with Absolute versus something like Flexbox, which is like where Flexbox is pretty forgiving and like rewrapping things and adjusting things as you change your window size, device size. Position Absolute does not care. It will like, it does this on a smaller screen size versus this on a desktop size, which is very different, right? Like this one, they're overlapping and touching. Over here, like they're not touching at all, right? And it is actually what we've told it to do. But this is why, like in general, like using relative and absolute is not preferable for things like your layout, for really core elements where it needs to look good across different device sizes. But it's pretty okay if you're going to do something like I did here with like a little badge. It's perfect use case for like relative and absolute. So let me show you here if I can find it. Let's see if my code might be kind of hard to read, but let's see. Let's find out. Okay. So you can see here we have like a card. We have like an image here. And then let's see if we can find my little badge, buddy. Here we go. We have like a little badge right here. And you can see it's like position absolute. So if I move this guy, oh, see how we're just literally putting it like negative bottom pixels from right here. And we're positioning it absolutely inside of here. So by default, it's like in this container down here. Maybe it's a card, maybe it's this whole little thing. It's been a while since I wrote this. I don't exactly remember. It might be in this card thing here. But somewhere in here, there is a relative little buddy. But anyways, we're making it absolute, and then we're able to pop it right on the overlap and basically just make it like a little badge that's overlaying it, which is pretty neat. And so that's like a good use case for it, because even if you scroll down, it's such a small change. We're only moving it by 16 pixels. On a mobile screen, where is it? Right here. It's going to do the same thing. You just have to worry about styling the whole card and making that rewrap. Whereas like something like this, where it's like a core part of the layout, it's really easy to break, especially across screen sizes. And so you can do it. It just is a lot of extra work for yourself. And if you're doing something like this, you got to think like, okay, is this the best way to do it? Maybe there's a better way. That makes sense. Cool? Any questions? Okay, you know where it is. You know where to find it. Yes?
So what would the difference between absolute position and static position be?
Absolute and static. Good question. Let's look at that real quick. Absolute, again, is like positioning it relative to either the entire box or to whatever relative box you put it inside of. And to just give you a quick idea of that, let's say like we are setting this thing to position relative, and then we are saying like this here, and top is 100 pixels right here. So see, like remember before, like we're in the top left of the whole document, and now we're like inside of this container because we've moved it. If you, the thing with absolute is like it'll try and find the biggest box it's in that's relative, or the entire document. So if we move this whole relative box and put it somewhere, that's what we're doing with the card, right? A smaller relative box it can anchor off of and go down 15 pixels. Similar thing here. That's relative. What static is literally positioning it. It ignores things like top and left. It is going to, all right, because I talked about fixed. Let's see if I just have an example here. Static CSS. But static is like even more intense than fixed. It's just going to stick in the same place on your browser, period. Let's see if I can. Static. Give me an example. It's not really giving me a good example. Static CSS example. That's not very helpful either. You won't use static very often. It's kind of similar to fixed, but yeah, it's I guess what this is saying, that's just the normal way it's positioned. Okay, I guess I'm getting it mixed up with fixed. Okay, so you have been using static this whole time and you didn't know it. Never mind, I'm getting it mixed up with fixed. Fixed is more interesting though. So remember I talked about like we want to figure out something that's like fixed to the top, the bottom, the left, or the right. So that's going to be fixed. So let's go ahead and create like a little div for this because we need some markup to put around here. Let's go ahead and do right here. Let's just call this like announcement dash bar. Let's just say I have bank. Let's see. Scott. Okay. And we'll go up here. We'll make our class announcement dash bar. And let's just give this a width of 100%. Background color of Facebook blue. Let's just go to text align center for now. Color white. Sure. Okay. Let's give it a padding. Not you. Padding of 1 rem. Okay. So we have this guy up here. This is actually kind of a bad example because it's up at the top already. So let's take our extra margin off here. Margin 0. Okay. So we see it's up here at the top, but what if we want to, take this guy and we want to put it at the bottom of the page, right? Where I have all my Zoom junk right now. So what if we want to do that instead? What we could do is go in here and adjust the position, because right now the position is static, I guess. I learned that's the normal thing. You never really need to make something static, that I've done. But anyways, you can. We don't really want it to be absolute or relative. You technically could, but there's a better way. If we know we always want it to be at the bottom, we don't want to nest inside anything. We don't want it to be in a smaller part. It's like always gonna be at the bottom of our browser. What we can do is fixed. And you can't tell the difference right now, but what we can do is if we're giving it bottom 0, you can see it's going to be there at the bottom. And if we scroll, it's going to be there at the bottom. If we're to do like a left, well, that won't actually do anything either because it's already left. But say we did width like 10%. There we go. It's over there on the left. It would be right. There we go. It's right. And it's like really positioned against this entire browser here. So fixed is something that we can break out and use. And if we're doing something like an announcement bar, it might actually be pretty useful for us. Let's see, what other one do we want to do? Sticky. Sticky is weird. Let's see if we have an example in here. Okay, so this is basically what sticky does, right? Imagine you're going down a page and you want something to stick to the top of the page as you hit a certain point. One of the ways you can do that is by making it sticky. So you do this and it goes with you as you go. And this is kind of how you would set it, right? We're positioning it in the flow, we're making it sticky, and we're saying top 0. I don't use this very often. I don't think I've ever used it. I have done something similar using JavaScript, but then I've wanted to like unstick it at some point and do different things. So just keep in mind, like you can do it if you ever want something where you scroll down and then it hits the top, like a nav bar maybe, where like you scroll down a little bit and then like it stays with you. That is possible to do. Just look up sticky and you can do that. But again, it's probably not like every web page all the time. You're definitely making everything sticky. That sounded weird. But that's that. Any questions about sticky, fixed, absolute, relative? Cool. All right, so cool. We just covered a bunch of stuff. Oh, background images. Hello. Cool. How many of you guys have figured out how to do a background image on your page so far? I see some of you guys did it. Like some of you, cool. We haven't actually covered it, so let's actually cover it really quick. Because this is probably like a pretty common use case. So we have all our stuff here, right? There we go. So we have our announcement bar. We have our stuff over here, having a good learning time. We have our background that is right now kind of salmon, which is a very strange color. So let's say we wanted to make this salmon container have like a background image, right? One way we could do that is by using this background image CSS property. So I'm just going to find Unsplash just to grab an image. Let's do like a nature image. Let's do this one. It's kind of cool. So let's just grab the image right here. And what we want to do is I'm going to go in. I'm going to find this container. And again, we already have the width set to 100%. We have the height set to 800 pixels. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to set the background dash image. And you can see right here, it's already trying to autocomplete for me. But background image is a little bit weird. We haven't done it before. What you want to do is pass it a URL. And it's kind of like we've done a link tag, you know, where you put in the source of the link tag, you put in quotes, and you put in a string where it can go find that resource online. We're going to do a similar thing. So we have to have a closing and ending parentheses, which is kind of weird. But a lot of times when you're using properties like gradients, like background images, when you have specific things, you'll use these parentheses to, and quotes sometimes to put stuff inside of it. So we need all those parts, the URL, opening, quote, URL, end quote, and parentheses, semicolon. A lot of stuff there. If you miss any of those, it won't work. But if we do have all those things, you notice that now we have this lovely photo in the background. Now, you might notice a few things. One, it's automatically repeating. By default, it will do that. It will take the height of your image, the width of the image, and if it doesn't fill it, it'll start just repeating it over and over again. That's just default behavior. We can actually override that with a property called background-repeats. And we can say things like no repeat, in which case it'll just like keep the background of whatever it had before. It'll fall back to it. There are also other things we can do. Like let's say we want to, okay, we don't want it to repeat. We know that. What about the background? I think it's position. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Background. What am I thinking? Size, I think is what it is. Yep, that's what I want. Okay, background size. So there's different options we have here. We can automatically just do it, which is just kind of keeps it as it is. We can do contain, which is going to really like keep the entire image in its entirety without distorting it. We can do cover, which is going to expand the image, even at a loss of quality, to cover every bit of the div that it's inside of. And those are really like the ones you want to switch between, right? Like contain or cover, contain or cover. Like contain and repeat, or cover and no repeat, something like that. And really the way you'd want to play with this if it's distorted is by like making the height or width like different, you know. So if we did all those things, put them in our CSS. Oh, wow, I totally broke this. What did I do? Well, that's gone beyond repair. So let's just do background dash repeat, no repeat, background, size, cover. There you go. Got the whole thing there. If we wanted to do a separate image inside of, so you can do this with literally any div, as long as, again, the trick with this is going to be, it is the actual div that you are controlling the size and position of, not the image. The image, the only thing it's doing is supplying the background to the div you tell it to be styling, basically, right? So if we want to style this Michael Scott one with a picture of Michael Scott, right here, right? You can find this. I like this one. So you can grab this. We can go to our announcement bar. Yes.
I have a question about sourcing the image. So
Yep.
the vast majority are sourced from the internet. Can you pull one from a desktop?
Yes. So the way that this works is, let's pull this. Let's actually do that. So the question was, can you pull these from the internet or from a desktop? And the answer is either, because all we're doing with a link, if you remember, going back to like the first times we've used links, the robot cares about is like, if I follow the path of turn-by-turn instructions you give me, will I find a thing that makes sense? Will I find an image at the end of these instructions you've given me. And so what we're doing with like this thing is we're telling you, hey, go out to the server, go out to the internet and go to exactly this place and you'll find this image and then pull it back here. We can do the same thing locally. We just have to be specific with our local path. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to save this image. And I'll go ahead and go to, I have my code folder here, which is where I want to keep it. I have my OK Coders folder, 2020 web dev, blah, 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 examples, relative positioning. And I want it to be in here because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it, hey, it's in this exact same folder as the HTML. Look for, what says it? Michael.jpeg. So we're going to save that. Should be saved. If we check it really quick, it looks like, yes, it is saved. Charming as usual. So what we're going to do here is in background URL, and I'm going to go ahead and put this semicolon at the end so I don't forget. What we're going to do is we're going to say period or dot, like for like this folder. That's what that's shorthand for. / and you notice how like VS Code is auto-completing for me. It's saying, well, I only see two things here. We have index or michael.jpg. I want michael.jpg. And then see if this works. Oh, this is not my thing. There we go. So you can see him right there. Hey, buddy, how's it going? There's actually some other stuff we can do here. So if we do background, also you notice I didn't even put background as image. There's like, just remember how we did like margin dash right, margin dash left, and then just margin, and there's a shorthand to do all of it. Same thing with background. Background dash image is a specific one. Background, you can actually pass it in this thing and it'll assume, oh, you wanted a color if you give it a color. Oh, you want an image if you give it a URL, stuff like that. So if we do background, see if I can type background dash position is what I want now. Yep, and so you notice here, like we can position this, like this is the center of that image. This is the bottom, this is the left, the right, the top. Can you guys see that? And so we can choose what to do there. And we can use any of the same ones we were doing before. Size. And it's confusing because position and size always get mixed up in my head. I got to remember what it is, but so it is. You can have all these little guys. Contain. Notice how it's containing the entire image. In, we said you can only be this high, but it's going to contain the image to it. You can say cover. So let's contain it. I like the little row. It's kind of funny. All right, so we'll grab these boys. We'll hop on back. And that's that. Cool. And if we wanted to, I wonder if we could even, yeah, there you go. So you can set the brightness right there. The entire thing. Interesting. So there's all these different ones you can play around with that Sage was showing us earlier. If we want to make it grayscale and real sad, we can do that. I don't even know what hue rotate is. I guess it's just make it greener or whatever color you want to shift it to. We can make it more or less opaque. We can saturate the color like you would on your iPhone when you're doing the slider. You can make it Western style. I know what the rest of those do. Let's do grayscale. That's actually kind of really funny and sad. So I'll do that. Ah, who's there? Someone on Zoom. Awesome. Hope you're doing well and feeling better. Okay, cool. Any questions about grayscaling? Not grayscaling. Any questions about the image stuff that we looked at? Does that answer your question about
Yes.
image stuff? Awesome.
Yeah, all the examples I was seeing were sourcing from the internet. So.
Yeah. Again, it's the same thing. Turn-by-turn directions to your image. You just got to be specific about where that image is living. But other than that, it should totally work.
Not right now. I've got the video off, but I could turn the video on.
It's okay. I muted you, Bob, which is a little bit more satisfying than I thought it would be. This may be the first time that's ever happened. we got Bob to shut up. Amazing. Okay, I think that's a good time for a break for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back here, wash your hands, grab a drink, give your neighbor a wave, and we will come right back, come with questions, and we will be focusing when we come back on media queries, Flexbox Refresher, and Bootstrap. Again, if you have questions, I'm going to wash my hands and grab some water and be right back, but TBD. Be here in a sec.
Introducing modes for Ring doorbells and cameras.
Just tell me you're sick.
I have no reason not to.
That's not a lot of detail. Like, how many ounces are we talking?
Yeah. What color is it?
Like, what do you want?
She's great. I mean,
Matt, I got a quick question.
yeah, shoot.
What you were doing just minutes ago with that border or that bar,
Uh-huh.
setting the filter that way,
Uh-huh.
that's gonna grayscale everything that's in that CSS block.
Correct. Whatever you've targeted that
So-
class or selector to.
Like, so your color white, if you had like blue text, it would grayscale the blue text as well.
No. So specifically, filter is only for images. It only affects images, I believe. I could be wrong on that.
I noticed that whenever you did the darken,
It did yeah, oh, that's true. Yeah, I was selecting the entire div, and the text is inside the div. So, yeah, actually it may work on just the entire div. I've only really ever used it on images. But I wonder, like, if we did a blur right here, would it blur the text as well? So if I do that, yeah, it's just doing that whole thing. So I guess you can do it to.
so you want a separate class for your font or for your color.
Yeah. So I wonder, can I select just like a P tag? Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I don't know why you would want to only blur text, but hey, well, I guess there's some good uses for that. That's kind of new. Yeah. I generally only think of it in terms of images, but yeah, you can use it with anything. That's pretty neat. Cool. Anyone else have questions floating around while we're waiting?
I have a question for you. The responsiveness of your page, especially like your tailwind, you've got, you know, those cards that were lined up like this and then went to stack vertically like that. What did you? Flexbox. It's all flex, just getting better at Flexbox.
And media queries, which I'm about to show you.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't get away with that media queries. I've been holding off because that's like more of a minor thing.
Okay.
Not minor, but like it only makes sense once you understand the other stuff to use in the media query. We'll cover that quick.
So, you know, page looks great at full resolution, and you got half of everything.
Yeah. You can't get away from that at a certain level.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually usually the better way to design pages, in my opinion, is to do it for mobile. And then as you get more space, add media queries to use the extra space you're getting on bigger screens. But it's harder to teach that way.
Cool. Okay. Okay. Use media queries as you go up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you. Is everyone here? Are we still waiting?
Did you put the code so far in the Slack?
All right, yeah, that should be up there in Slack. Cover that. Media queries. Yes. Remote. All right, let's see. Media queries. Gee, it's not in these class notes. Well, it's very important for you to learn. I don't know why it wouldn't be in here. Yeah, not helpful at all. Okay. You guys all here? Cool, let's roll. We got 3 hours left. And we still need to cover media queries, Flexbox, Bootstrap, layout, Netlify, Instagram. Cool. Okay, media queries. So I just pulled up like the MDM docs here on media queries. I'll show this out really quick. So you may have noticed like on a lot of websites, you go on a big size and it looks one way. And then things like this nav bar, right, look totally different or stack a different way on a smaller screen. And this doesn't just happen out of the box usually. Usually what you have to do is you have to say on mobile, change the layout this way. On desktop, use the extra space in this way. And the way that we do that in CSS is called media queries. And so basically, the way a media query works is we have this @media directive, basically. And then we're telling it what we're targeting. It's a screen. If you have like a separate layout, when people go to print your web page, that's how you can like remove a bunch of stuff. Oh, don't show the sidebar, the navigation, or anything when people print it. This is how you would do it. Typically, we really only use this on screen. But there's other ways to do it. But most media queries will look something like this. There's let me go ahead and show you here. So if we just have a relative example here, let's say we want this, we don't want to show this announcement bar on mobile devices. Once you get down to a certain size, we want to hide it so it doesn't even show up, right? Well, we can do that with media queries. And so we're gonna need a couple things. Let me look up like, I'll show you just like the media query size I use here. Let's do breakpoints. So what you do need to have if you're doing this is basically like breakpoints of like at what width of the window, what size of window do you want the layout to change? Because you have to give it a very specific pixel number. See how like when I bring up my dev tools here, see how in the corner it says like 787 pixels, and if I scroll, see how that number is getting smaller? I want to give it a specific number. Right now I'm at like 600 and 500, and now I'm getting closer to iPhone territory, right? Once I'm under 640, this is probably like a big iPhone kind of thing. Once I am kind of 760 and above, it's like a tablet to like a computer. Once I'm at like 1024, anything like a bit bigger than that is like bigger than a normal laptop screen size, most likely, or you're getting into laptop territory. So these are some of the breakpoints I like to use because they kind of contain like anything smaller than 640 is like smartphones, including the big ones. Anything smaller than 768 is probably tablets, if it's bigger than this but smaller than this. Once you get into 1024, you're really talking like laptop size screens, and anything bigger than 1280 is probably like a big desktop screen. So these are the ones that I like to use, but you can put any basically ones that you want in here. And so what we can do is, this is also going to change. You may notice that these are like min width here. There are two ways that you can write your media queries, right? You can write it for mobile first or for desktop first. These are media queries that are written for your mobile phone first, meaning I'm going to do the mobile phone layout where everything's small, it's narrowed together, it's really easy to use on your phone. And then as I get more space, I'm going to spread it out and do more stuff with it, which is the opposite of how we've been deciding, right? So what this says is like, when the screen is at least at minimum 640 pixels, add these new things, hide the Michael Scott announcement bar, whatever, or start showing, in this case, it would be, right, by default, we're assuming we're on a phone, we display none the Michael Scott bar, and we'll do that in a sec. If we make it bigger to 640 or to 768 or bigger, display block the Michael Scott announcement bar. But on mobile screens, it's bigger. And as we make it bigger, once it hits, you get big enough to trigger that breakpoint, it goes on. That's what min width does. The other way is max width. This is where we were saying, we assume we're on desktop. We have all this space for activities. And then as we go down and hit 1024, hide this thing. Because at the max it can be displayed is at this. And once you go to 1023, like, boom, okay, that's not applied anymore. And at 768 to 1024, we're hiding it. This is probably kind of confusing, so let's just get into some examples to kind of show you how it works. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to go ahead and put an @media right here, and you notice it wants to help me kind of do some things here. And then I have to put in some parentheses where I'm going to put in the rule, okay, what am I going to target with this? So for this, I'm going to do max width. Let's do like 600 pixels because that should grab our basically anything that is smaller than like a tablet, roughly. But that's not an exact number. I'm just kind of pulling it out of a hat. And then we got to put our CSS inside of this. What a media query wraps is all your other CSS. So just like we selected this out here for everything, now we have to put another class, the exact same class, with its own opening and curly bracelets. And then we have to say what we want to be different at this device size, which is display none. So what does it, if we read this all together, right? This is a little bit different than what we've been doing before, but we're saying, hey, we're writing a media, by default, the announcement bar, again, it's implied here. You could say it specifically, but it's going to be, right, display block by default, or yeah, it's display block. And then like all this good stuff, grayscale and stuff, that's like independent of what, we don't care what size it is. That's just all the time. But if and only if the screen is as long as the screen is up to, but no wider than, the max this can be true at is 16 pixels or 600 pixels. So anything that is, right, like 600 pixels or below, grab the announcement bar and display none the announcement bar. So here's what that looks like, right? Like big screen, we see the Michael Scott announcement bar, and see what, keep an eye on that pixel count on the top. We have 900, 800, watch for 600, boom, it disappears. So you can see, hold on, is it, let me go ahead and do the responsive tools. That may make this a little bit easier to see. There we go, because now it's giving us that up top. Do responsive here. Okay, so I can grab it. So notice like we're at 700, 600, we're going down. Remember, we said once we go to 500, it is then, see how this media query popped up right down here? Display none, boom, boom. That's the rule that is changing. And the thing that changed is our max width, our width of our thing right here changed. So if we take it to 600, still true. If we take it to 601, notice it went away. That rule no longer applies because it has exceeded the max width of that rule. 600, 601. Yeah. So that's how you use media queries. Now we could do this the other way around. If we were designing for mobile first, say, hey, we want to show the minimum width when you can hide the announcement bar would be, let's say, like 800, not 8,000, 800 pixels, which is saying like, hey, by default, we, interesting, is it showing it? Yeah. Let's go up here. Let me think. Okay, so this is like the flip side of it, right? Which is like by default, I do not want to show this because let's assume we're starting from our mobile device. Hey, I know there's going to be an announcement bar, but I only want to show it to screens that are larger than 444 pixels. And then I would add the announcement bar on. Now that's kind of like hurting my head because like we started from a desktop first and now we're trying to work in like a mobile first media query. And so like this is actually like totally backwards. What we'd want to have is something like everything would be in here, right? And then it would just be like, hey, by default, we don't show any announcement bar. But if and only if we are on a size that is larger than a smartphone, we have room for an announcement bar and we will show an announcement bar. And that would be the other way that we can write it. Neither way is right or wrong per se. It depends on the site that you're doing and whether it's a mobile first site in the way that you're styling it or whether it is a desktop first site. If you start from a desktop, you're going to be wrangling and forcing your site down into a mobile size and to look good on mobile. If you start it to make it look really good on mobile, you're going to wrangle and make it look good on a desktop size screen and take up that extra real estate. There are pros and cons to both ways. As you're getting started out, it'll probably be easier if you've been writing a lot of desktop first stuff to write it for the desktop first. I would strongly encourage you to try writing stuff for mobile first and using min width in your media queries. And so going and finding like, okay, I'm going to write it for the phone first. Everything's going to stack in a column. And then as I get more space, I'm going to, boom, snap it out and take up more space on a tablet, on a desktop, on a really big desktop, that kind of thing. That's a lot of stuff. What questions do you guys have about media queries?
Let me see if I can formulate this. So you would put a media query, minimum width, you do all that. So like your Tailwind site to get those cards to stack.
Yep.
Did you put the cards in their own container? And then, so if you put that into the media query, would you say flex direction column at this width? Does that make,
Yep, totally. Yeah. So let's see if we can force any of these media queries here. Gotta be some somewhere. Not seeing it. Because I don't know if I use media queries on this.
I'm gonna say, is it just using the rack for the flex on there?
Yeah, usually. So like, we'll do this in an example later on. But like, let's say a really common example could be. Let me do this real quick. Let's make our container not inline. Flex. And let's turn off the absolute here. So we have both of these. Let's give these each like a margin of 2rem. Okay, so now we have both of these right here. Let's say that we want these to stack left to right. Let's create like one more of them right here. Okay, so we'll have two. Let's screw that out. Where'd the other one go? Did I miss?
Position.
Interesting. I was just floating off. Oh, never mind. I'm just really zoomed in. Let's get out of that. Okay, there we go. I'm not crazy. There are 3 boxes now. Great. Okay, so again, I said like I want these all to be. I want to make the container a flex container, which means by default things will go from left to right if you guys watch that Flexbox lesson. But let's say we want to switch this on mobile, and by default it's just going to try and squish them all down to stay side by side. What if I want to switch it so they're in a column and they stack on mobile? Well, we can do that with a media query. And what we're going to do is basically say, hey, at media. And then, oops, we got to put my thing here. We got to say, what would this be? This would be max width. Let's call it like 600 pixels. Because again, we're going desktop to mobile. And then what we'd want to grab is the container. Because what we want to do is instead of having like the default, which is like flex direction of a row, what we want to do is change this to a column. Okay, let's just go ahead and put that row, which is what it is by default, but I'm going to put it here so it's a little bit easier to read and make sense of. Not container, container, naming, the hardest parts. Okay, so we have our flex direction, and we want to make this a column, but only if and only if the max width is, if it's 600 pixels or smaller. These are a little weird to read, but that's what it's saying, right? So what we have now is like right now it's going to be, if we select it, right, flex direction, row. And as we go down, watch, we're at 800, 700, and once we hit 600, it should snap and go to column. right? And then we could also do stuff like, okay, if we wanted to justify the content center, this be line item center. There we go. Yeah. We could do something like this, right? So like on this one, it takes up the space. On this one, it takes up the space. That makes sense. Yeah, so this is where like Fluxbox, yeah, I know, it's great, right? Like Fluxbox plus this one little trick to like change it on text can like really solve a lot of your layout headaches, where it's like, oh, I just want this to, you know, you're trying to figure out all these crazy ways. All you need to do is like, oh, I don't want you to go left to right. I want you to go top to bottom. And you can do that with literally a media query and one line of CSS when selected, which is really, really handy. So I'll go ahead and share that really quick. Questions about that?
Now, if you had fixed width on each one of your divs,
Mm-hmm.
would it unwrap, it would go ahead and colonize anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so what's happening here is like I don't have very much space on my screen, but I've told it to have a lot of margin. Yeah, so I have just like this, let's say I did like 2 pixels, right?
I think right now it's like 33% on the width.
Yeah, it's 33%. Yeah, so we can make this do whatever we like. But yeah, it's still gonna, as long as the container's big enough, I'll do the same thing. Yeah, it's not too bad. Cool. This is a really ugly website. But it's okay. Because we're learning. Okay. Probably a good time for a quick Flexbox refresher. Okay, so Flexbox refresher. Hopefully there were like 3 main things you took away from that. What did you guys take away from that, or how were you able to use that in your sites? I saw a few of you guys use it. Were any of you guys able to use a Flexbox, a part of Flexbox in your layout this week? And can you shout out like what you did use? Just raise your hand and tell us really quick.
I used Flexbox for the 2-column deal at the bottom of that, and then actually given it a number to where you could make them where the image was on one side, then on the other side.
Yeah, the flex order. Yeah. Yeah, awesome.
That was really nice.
Yeah, so we did some flex ordering, we did some stuff. Yeah.
I was trying to like emulate the Google homepage, and so I put each like here's a container, so that I could get like the row and then the column in the middle centered, and then bottom row.
Yep. Yep, awesome. With like the navigation links and stuff. Yeah, so we can have stuff in the corner, stuff in the center, stuff in another corner, and it'll resize and not get all crazy on you. Yeah, that's a great use of Flexbox. Any other Flexbox uses for things that you think you could use it for? Yeah, it's like a lot of stuff, right? And it's pretty flexible. So I'll do a quick, I'm not going to cover that whole thing because you guys can go check out that free course anytime. It goes way more in depth than I can right now in this class, but I'll be on Slack, obviously, even after this class ends to answer questions on it if you have any. But let's just go through a few. So we already went ahead and did this flex direction row and flex right here. And if we go ahead and check the CSS tricks, Flexbox guide, just super helpful. We remember that by default, let's see this. There we go. All good stuff. So remember, like we really have 2 things, right? We have the container, and that's when we make it display flex. And then we have the elements that are immediately inside of that container. So we have that right here, right? With our container, right? Which we literally called container. Doesn't have to be called that. We can make it whatever. The thing that makes it a container is by putting display flex on it, not flex. Now it's a flex container. And remember that and then we have these children that are immediately inside of it. That's another trick here. If you have a container in a container in a container, like if we put another one in here, this is not flexed, right? Just because it's inside of it. If we wanted this paragraph to be flexed inside of this, we would have to make this display flex as well. So by default, nothing is flex unless you explicitly say everything inside of this tag is flex, if that makes sense. And we can see that right here with these items. So inside of this tag and only this tag that I have marked as display flex, this is a flex container, and these are flex children or flex items. Once we do have something display flexed, the first thing that's true is that we have this flex direction from left to right. We call the main axis, right? And by default, we put things in a row going from left to right, but we can reverse that, right? So one of the things that we can do is if we go to our parent, and this is another thing with Flexbox you'll learn, 9 times out of 10, like when you're doing basic layout stuff, you are styling the parent and telling it what to do with the children, not selecting the children and telling them where to go, if that makes sense. You want to grab the box that's holding all the children and tell it where to go. That is a weird sentence as well, but we'll just keep moving past it. Okay, so if we say not classroom, but container, right? Because we want to affect the classroom. What if we want to make these so that we have the learn and time ones going from left to right instead of the let's get relative? Let's also change the name of this. Let me do, so we can tell these apart a little bit. Also a real good learning time. Apple. What's going on there? But that's fine. Okay, so if we want to change this, by default we have flex direction row, but what we can also do is row reverse. And now remember right here with row, left, let's get relative is on the far left. If we switch it to row reverse, reverse, it is the other way around. And if we were to add another one, right, it would keep going from right to left, which is interesting. You can do that. And again, the way it's calculating these is on the main axis. It's reversing the main axis. By default, the main axis is left to right, but that's because the flex direct, or the flex, what am I trying to say here? Direction, yep, it's the same thing. The flex direction is in a row, not a column. So if we're to change this, we have column and we have let's get relative. Again, not going from left to right, but from top to bottom. We can also do column reverse, in which case, just like when we flipped it and went from left to right to right to left, yes, it does go from bottom to top. So now we can say our first one, let's get relative, is on the bottom. Then we're adding on top of it this one and adding on top of it a real good learning time. Now, along with these two, let's go back to row, our default one. We also learned about justify and align content. So these can get a little bit confusing. But like the reason they're confusing is because your main axis can change, right? Remember I said like the main axis by default is from left to right. So it starts left and goes right. But if we change a column, it actually, what we're doing is we're changing the main axis to go from left to right, to top to bottom. So right now, main axis left to right, we change it to column, main axis top to bottom. Part of what's confusing about justify content is it's not based on top down or left to right. It's based on the alignment along the main axis. So this means a totally different thing. And if you have the main axis going in row, what justify content center will do is snap everything from going left to right in the center. If you have it in column, what it actually does is snaps it from top to bottom in the center. And the same thing is true with align items right here. By default, this is doing the top and bottom centering. But if you flip it so you have the column as the main axis, it says your left to right center. So they do, like, they're two sides of the same coin. It just depends on whether you're in like your row setting or your column setting. So let's do all of those really quick just so you get a hands-on example. So again, right now we're in row by default, going left to right. If we go ahead and set this to be our justify content center, what do we expect to happen? What we should see, I think, is that everything goes in the center. You can't see this very well right now. Let me go ahead and make these classrooms. Let me make these like 20 pixels. There you go. That's really ugly. There you go, 100 pixels, so you can see a little better. So now, again, let's say justify content end right here. But if we make it center, it goes right to the center from left to right, because again, justify content aligned to the main axis. Right now, the main axis is from left to right. So we can also tell us to go stay at the start, which is what it is by default. We can say go to the end, we can say to space around, space between, space evenly, all that good stuff. We can center. Now, if we want to, well, let's say we want to put these dead center in the middle of the page. We would want to do that not along the main axis, but along the cross axis. The way we always do the cross axis is with align dash items. So you can see here it's giving me different options. And so we can see here is we'd have center right here, which puts it right in the center. I'm zoomed in a little bit, so it doesn't quite look like the center, but it is. Oh, went away. Line items, center. But you can see, just like we did with that other one, we can say, hey, go to the flex start, which is by default. Go to the bottom to the end. We can say to do any of those good things, baseline, good stuff. So we can do that. Now let's uncheck both of these and bring them back. But let's go ahead and say we're switching to column again. Now we should expect these to behave differently, right? Remember how before when we wanted to align things left to right along the main axis, when we were using row and left to right was the main axis, we used justify content. Well, now if we use justify content, again, the main axis is no longer left to right. The main axis, just like in this diagram, it's not left to right, it's top to bottom. And so if we do the same exact CSS of justify content, it's going to do stuff top to bottom. And it's aligning it on the top and the bottom. It's, again, hard to tell because this height is way too big. If I make it here, there we go. 100 by 100. So again, if I take this off, it goes to the top. If I put it in, it goes to the center. If I were to put flex end, it would go to the bottom. So we go with the center. And then align items, what should we expect to happen if we enable that? Well, again, the main axis is right here, top to bottom. This is our cross axis. We know that align items controls the placement along the cross axis. So if we say center along the cross axis, if we enable this, it should pop right to the center. And so it really depends on how we do these things. One, we have to make the container flex, right? The parent, not the children. Two, we have to make sure that we understand the flex direction. By default, it is row, left to right, but we can make it column, top to bottom, or reverse column, reverse row. And then we have our justify content, center, start, and space around for the main axis. And then align items, center, start, and along the cross axis, which changes depending on column or row. I know it's a lot. Do you want me to go through any part of that again? Or do you guys feel like you kind of have enough handle on it to go rewatch that video and like play around with it a little bit? Thumbs up, thumbs down, in the middle. Thumbs up. Thumbs up, that's good. I'll take a thumbs up. I dig it. All right. So we did a quick Flexbox refresher. We're gonna keep. Man, we are rolling. I feel like we're doing like 4 more weeks in like 1 week. Last week, best week. It's cool. But what I want to do, I'll get through Bootstrap stuff. I'll show you Netlify. And then I think what we'll spend probably like the last half of class doing is actually using this stuff. That's how you're going to learn it at home. That's how you're going to learn it here. It's like, let's take media queries, Flexbox. You're going to freaking love Bootstrap because it makes less work for you until you break something. I'll show you how to do it and not break stuff. But once you do all that together, you're going to like start just rolling and building layouts super fast. And I think that's going to be really exciting. And so I want to make sure we have as much hands-on time at the end to actually do that. All right. Bootstrap. Who's heard of Bootstrap? Has anyone used Bootstrap yet? You have? No? Just heard of it? How would you describe Bootstrap to everyone?
I don't really know enough to be able to describe it. I've just like heard.
But you've heard like people are using it for like layouts and CSS and you just kind of heard it around.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So let's go to, I'm actually going to start a new thing here in a second, but I'll just go to the Bootstrap site first. Bootstrap. Let's go. We also have some docs here with Bootstrap. Zach, do you know if these Bootstrap docs are these the latest for Bootstrap 4, or do we not know?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Some of the stuff in the docs may still be relevant, and a lot of it's probably still the same. Bootstrap doesn't like totally change, I would recommend going straight to the Bootstrap docs first, because Bootstrap is like a living thing, right? It changes. Not a ton to where like they're breaking your site all the time, but they switch versions from like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Now we're on 4. When we made this curriculum, we're probably on like 2 or 3, probably mainly 3. But the docs here are very good. Tons of examples, great code snippets you can copy, so it's less likely to break. So I highly recommend checking that out. But this is Bootstrap. Bootstrap was actually created originally by a couple programmers at Twitter who were realizing one day they're like, you know, we're building these web applications. A lot of other people want to build web applications. And we're all kind of redoing the same work. We all want like a nav bar. We all want to file links and warnings in the same way. We all want a modal to come down and confirm certain things. What if we made a bunch of pre-written snippets of styling, of CSS, of code, of JavaScript, things like that, but mainly CSS, that made it really easy to create those components really fast, so I don't have to do it from scratch every time. What if we also, remember how we were using the box model? We're breaking things up into kind of these grids and laying them out. Oh, it should take up this sidebar should take up 30% of the width of the page, and the other 60% should be for the content. Well, it's like, well, what if we also built in this idea to Bootstrap where we can easily break things up into thirds and fourths and sixths and twelfths, and then use those across mobile and desktop screen sizes? What if we made it really easy to do that? So that's what they built, and that's what Bootstrap is. You basically bring this into your site, and it gives you a bunch of styling for free, and it enables you to basically style things in a grid really easily. And it enables you to use things like done for you nav bars like that can make a lot of work easily. The reason I did not show you this on week 1 is because under the hood, there's no magic to this, right? It's all CSS, it's all HTML, it's all JavaScript that you're going to learn, a little sprinkle of it. But honestly, you don't need that right now. You shouldn't need JavaScript for anything because we're not doing any, remember I said like HTML is like the bones, CSS is like the makeup or skin, whatever. JavaScript's like the muscle, it's doing things, changing things. You shouldn't need to change anything. There are cool things you can do, and there's a cool course I'll highly recommend called JavaScript 30. Once you get a little bit further in, by the same guy who did that Flexbox course, this is like a great example of like some fun JavaScript stuff you can do once you know a little bit. But I like, that's probably like a great thing to do once you're in and learning JavaScript after our next module. But you don't need it. Under the hood, it's just CSS. And if you don't understand how CSS works and you break your Bootstrap, you won't know how to fix it. Because it's not like fixing Bootstrap. Bootstrap is just pre-written CSS. And if you're copying someone else's code and you don't understand how it works under the hood, and then it breaks, you're kind of up the creek without a paddle, right? Because you've introduced a bug, but you don't actually have the context to fix. But if you use it as like, I know I could build this navbar from scratch. I know I could lay this out with Flexbox from scratch, but I am choosing to use Bootstrap to move a little faster, and I know what it's doing under the hood, so if it's off, I can fix it. That is a very healthy way to approach it, and that is the way I would encourage you to approach it. And if you get in a little bit over your head with any of this stuff, and it's like, this is broken and I don't know why, I would back up to think, how would I do this without Bootstrap? How would I do it with just vanilla CSS? And then see what Bootstrap's doing under the hood, if that makes sense. But we'll look through it. I say this because it's so common when I was getting started to like break something and I was like, oh no, Bootstrap, I hate you. Why have you done this to me? But it was really me doing this to me because it was just a CSS thing that I had done, or a tag I hadn't closed, which is so common. We'll see. But getting Bootstrap in a project is actually quite easy. It has this getting started page here. I'll throw in Slack. Oh, hey, why'd I add the display none to the announcement bar? Mo, the reason I added display none to the announcement bar is because I added that second media query below it, where once you get above a mobile screen size, we did display block. And so that's why. It was just an opposite way to do it. Nope. Same meeting invite. We're good. That's why. Okay, so we have this quick start page here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my code. I'm going to stop my live server, and we're going to do a new one here. So, okay, this guy here, closing it down, media queries, closing it down, breakpoints, closing it down. I'm gonna close out of this. I'm gonna open my file explorer. I'm gonna go to my examples. And I'm going to create a new one called Bootstrap Intro. I'm going to create a new file inside of Bootstrap Intro called index.html. And you'll notice here when you're on the Bootstrap page, they give you a lot of stuff. You have the option to only bring in your CSS if you have like an existing HTML page and you just want to add this in. We have some JavaScript stuff. Some of the things that we'll do later, like modals and things, like they use JavaScript. We really don't need this, but by default, it'll include it. So if it's there, it's fine. If you're trying to use a modal and it doesn't work, this is probably why it probably doesn't have these scripts. They also have a starter template, which includes your HTML, your head, your title, and all the Bootstrap stuff. This is probably what I would grab if I was doing a new project. So you can go ahead and just grab this here. I'm not going to put this in Slack because you can just go to Google, type in getting started, go to starter template, and always get the most up-to-date version here, which is probably better. I'm going to go in, I'm going to paste this, save it, and I go live. And boom, I have it right here. And that is working. So if I do hello world, wave, boom, it's working. And you notice we're already getting some styling out of the box. Notice how it's not, like if I were to disable the link right here, right here, notice it goes back to like the sans serif. That's what we're used to seeing. Bootstrap is already loading in its opinionated way of doing fonts, right here, where it's loading in. Like basically it looks like the system font stack that I showed you a couple weeks ago, right? That's what it's going to put in. Just pretty nice. Notice also, remember how we always had to go in and remove that body margin that the browser put in by default? We don't have that. Look at that. It's going all the way out to the edge. And why is that happening? Well, if we look at the margin, you notice how it has this reboot_reboot.scss. SCSS is just a fancy form of SCSS called Sass styling, basically. It's just a way to write fancy CSS, and you do not need to worry about it now. But if you see that, just think, oh, fancy CSS. And you'll get, when you need it, you'll need it. But notice like that margin we normally had to add in, it's already been added in for us. And they've done things like kind of reset the size of the font on the page, like the color of the text. And so that's pretty nice. It's doing a lot of that resetting that we normally had to do by default already for us, which is pretty sweet. So we got all our stuff here. And we should be able to start it in. Are you guys able to get that started? Get it in there? Another quick thing I'll show you guys. Let me see if I have this in my plugins. Plugin. Under, can we enable prettier? You guys, does this work? This is a quick thing I'll show you. I probably should have shown you guys this sooner. You may notice, this is not essential. You don't need this, but if you go in VS Code to the marketplace and you search for, what do we do here? Like PRETTIER, prettier. This is a code formatter I've installed. If you've noticed, if I like kind of make my stuff all out of whack and then I save, it resets it all every time I save. This is why this is happening. And it's really good regardless of your skill level, because it helps do things like indent your code well. It'll really help with JavaScript, but it also works with HTML, I believe, out of the box. If this doesn't work out of the box, that's okay. Let's not take up a ton of class time doing it, because honestly, it's totally optional. But if you have time at the next break or in between, go ahead and install this and enable it. And what it'll do is, like, as we're going through and you're just pasting stuff in and going in and doing like doing all this stuff, like when you save, it'll just snap it all back into place, which is really nice. It makes it a lot easier to avoid making bugs. And I would recommend it if you're able to do that. So that's what that is. Okay. Bootstrap, let's go. So we have our new Bootstrap site. We have it up in our code. And now we're able to kind of take a look at what it can do. So we have our starter template. It's just put in our style sheet and some scripts. and a responsive meta tag. So this is just like on an iPhone, and make sure it takes up the whole width of your iPhone or your Android device. It looks good. It's doing some reboot styling. It's making sure there's like a weird thing where there's some extra padding that the browser adds in on your boxes and things like that. So it removes all of that, so which is really nice, kind of some common sense stuff. And then a lot of where we'll be working is in these layout, content, components, utilities. That's really a lot of what we'll be doing. So let me show you, I'm actually going to show you a component first. Keep in mind, everything in here is basically should be in a grid or in a container. And that's what we're going to want to do. I'm going to skip that for a second, come right back. But usually this is where we want to start. I'm going to go to component. And one of the things that we've been building a lot, right, by using Flexbox, by using styling, all these different things, is like a nav bar. And this can take a good while to create on your own because you got to stretch out the links. What about doing it on mobile now? We've learned that we kind of have to do that twice because you can't have a whole desktop type thing. We have to stack it or do something different on mobile. If you're just building an app and you're trying to get into the JavaScript, you're trying to build something, you're trying to make it so you can get into users' hands quickly, and you don't need the nav to be custom or to do anything crazy fancy, this can be a good shortcut to get this in their hands faster. Just grabbing this pre-written for you component. And so this is what it looks like, right? We have this drop down here, all the stuff, and you notice it has like all this HTML. It's already done, and it has all these classes. The danger here is like just looking at this, if you're not familiar with Bootstrap, there's no way for you to know exactly what's going on with every one of these classes. There's so many divs, there's so many classes. We just don't know off the top of our heads, right, what everything is. So it's okay that we use this, but we have to remember, like, we need to have the frame of mind that like this is just helping us move faster and we know how to do this from scratch. Not that like we want to be really careful and understand what's going on. So even just looking at it at a high level, I can tell, okay, the nav is wrapping everything. That makes sense. We kind of have a link and a button with this navbar brand floating over here. We have a group with a list and some list items, which makes sense here. Okay, I get that. We have one of these has a drop-down thing and a toggle. Okay, so it looks like we're doing some special styling on this one to enable this. Cool, makes sense. And then we have kind of this other one over here with a form. Okay, and the search. Okay, so it's probably this one over here. So you could see if I had to redo this from scratch using Flexbox, I probably could, right? I could be like, okay, I have a link over here, a div with some links here, a div with a form here, and I could spread them out. I would know how to do this. I'm just choosing to use this to make it move a little faster. So if I take this, I put it inside of my body right here, paste it, save, and then I come back. What I have right here spanning across the entire site right now is this new navbar, right? And if I stretch it down, you'll notice it switches to this special mobile version. And that was all done for me, right? I just had to copy and paste it once, and then it just works. Actually, one thing I do want to do, going back to this container, I want to go ahead and add that because it's actually throwing stuff off already. So one of the thing is like just this div of container. One of the reasons I've been using this is like pretty much any site you do, you're going to want this inside of the body anyways. This kind of builds in some stuff so everything isn't bumping up against the edge. And so I just want to grab this class container. I'm going to put it inside of the body so it wraps everything. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, find the closing body tag, and then I want to enclose that div. There we go. So notice how stuff is kind of like already in that together. Now, if we did want the nav bar to be outside of that, we could do it, right? Take this div, make sure everything below the nav bar is contained in it. Notice how Prettier helped me out and bumped everything over. That way the nav bar takes up the full width of the screen, but everything else is kind of in this nice box and doesn't bump up against the edge. That's also a very good common way to do it. And it is why we would not want to put container on the body tag, because otherwise that's the top tag. There's no way for us to have the nav outside of the body and everything else in there. That would be no good. Yeah.
So if you're gonna do like the little the menu, like the 3 lines from scratch, is that an image or is there a way to do that without making it an image?
Great question. Question was, these 3 little lines here, how would we do that from scratch? So we can do that by going into our dev tools, right-clicking or going in here, tricking the browser to think it's mobile with our little icon here. And then let's just go ahead and look at it and see what's going on. So we see here, this is inside the nav. And then we have this button. And then inside of the button, we have this class with like this icon thing. It looks like what it's actually doing is pulling a background image for this, right? And so all this actually is like, we could use this without the icon. It just is like a sign that tells us like what to click on because it's a target to hit. It's not actually doing anything special. The real star of the show is this div, or this button, that has this special stuff on it, this secret sauce. That's really what it's doing is giving JavaScript a handle to slide out that drawer. That's what's happening here. But what's happening, you'll notice we're using our background image, CSS, just like we learned earlier, but it's got this crazy thing. What this is an SVG image, a scalable vector graphic, I wanna say. If not, Google it, something close to that. It's basically how, like, if we have a PNG or a JPEG, like, you know how if you make those really small or really big, they get stretched out because it's like a set of pixels. And SVG isn't like that. So what an SVG is it's basically just like a line drawing, a collection of lines. And so it can make those lines stretch out really wide, really small without losing any quality because it's basically just drawing like a solid object on there. So that's what it's doing. It's drawing our 3 lines, putting that as the background to that button. And that's what's happening. So you can actually get tons of SVGs online. There's a thing called Font Awesome that will do this. And basically, this is like a way to get icons and logos on your site. I think it's actually what Bootstrap uses a lot. So it's going to give us all these ways to use it. Let's just look at the icons here. So you'd like install this on your site, kind of like Bootstrap, so it could style everything the right way. But then you'd have something like this little icon. And we're gonna make it pay for everything. There we go. There's like a little HTML thing we could use. We could put this tag in and it would work. Or there's other ways that we could do it. There's another one, like here's a set I really like to use called Heroic Cons UI. So this is just for free on GitHub. Anyone can use it for any project. And it's just a set of icons like this. And the other way you can use SVG icons, let's say we just want like a book icon, like something like this. What you can do is grab this, and what this little bit of code is just saying like, hey, this SVG icon, it's got some stuff like the width, the height. There's a lot of trickiness to SVGs that you'll have to learn, like what you grab onto to style it, all that good stuff. But for now, let's just say we want to put this like right next to our hello world. Or maybe we want to put this like next to our nav bar. Let's go ahead and put that right here. Put a span, put our SVG inside of it. And you'll notice that we have that icon right there because we just literally pasted in instructions for what to do. And then if we wanted to, we could do things like, oh, okay, well, actually, I want this to be a flex, and I want to say align item center. There's like a little, yeah, we have to mess with this a little bit. But there's some stuff we could do to like style it and get it kind of how we wanted. It's not exactly the way we want it right there, but.
So at what part of the code is it telling the hamburger menu to show up once the screen is a certain size?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see the media.
Sure, yeah, totally. So it's not the hamburger specifically, but what it is doing is basically we have 2 menus, right? I believe, let's check. Maybe that is a really clever way. Let's see what they did here. No, looks like they're pretty good with it. Yeah, interesting. Okay. So basically, let's see here. See if we can find some media queries. Well, I wonder if there's actually probably a better way to find this. Probably something related to this. Let's just go in the nav bar again. I'm actually just going to go into this whole thing quick. Search for media. Yeah, it's not helpful at all. So again, this is kind of one of the things with Bootstrap. It's doing, it is under the hood all CSS and HTML and JavaScript, but like off the top of my head, I'm trying to figure out exactly where it is. I don't see it right off the bat. It's in here. I don't know exactly where it is doing that, which is one of the troubles with using someone else's code, right? Like if I wrote this, I'd be able to tell you like right away, oh, it's in blah, blah, blah. I can't tell you right off the bat, but we do know that it's happening somewhere, right? And we could probably read the documentation, look at other stuff and figure out exactly where it's doing some of this stuff. It definitely seems like it's hiding some of this stuff here, right? Like it's saying, hey, the minimum which you can show this at is at 992. So if we make this 992, it's good. But if we make it one smaller, it gets hidden. I think this is where a lot of it's happening. It's keeping a lot of that stuff the same, but moving it under that guy. And then it's like breaking it all out. Again, it's doing that mobile first. And then when you get bigger, it's using the extra space by saying, spread the stuff out. So I think that's what's happening. But it's a complex component. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So something to be aware of. I'm sorry that wasn't super helpful, but was it a little helpful?
And the matter is that I really need to understand my CSS before I
Yeah, that's really the thing. There's no substitute for that. So we got to make sure we understand like what's going on, what we're doing. Cool. Okay, so we learned how to drop in a little navbar component. Cool. That's good. What else can we do here? Let's look at the grid layout, right? So we did navbar. We installed Bootstrap. Cool. The other thing that Bootstrap gives us out of the box is this layout grid. So we want to have like a container in here. It's required to have a container. Otherwise, the stuff inside of it that I'm about to show you will not work. So we really do need that container layout. It's not optional. But once we do that, what else do we have? You notice they're using media stuff built in. That's good. That's not helpful. What we want to go is go to the grid. Okay. I'll share this. Okay. Bob says prettier is great, but he encourages you to format your own code to let you see code blocks and become comfortable with nesting. I'll have you plus that. That's a really good thing to do. Yes, do it yourself, but also like it's the same thing with Bootstrap, right? The same way you don't want to just blindly use Bootstrap and not know how to do your own CSS, but it's really helpful to move fast. You want to know how to nest and make sure that your code is cleanly organized without prettier. But if you're wasting tons of time just like adding indentations to your code all day when that's not the point of what you're trying to practice and learn right now, you're just trying to make something. That may not be the best use of your time as you get that under your belt. So spend a weekend, spend a couple days really being able to indent and organize your code well. Try something with lots of divs and nested divs where you get to practice it. But then know that there are tools that can help you move faster and make less mistakes as you go. Cool? Cool. All right. Grid system. So one of the reasons I had you guys learn Flexbox as well is that is actually what Bootstrap is using for its layout under the hood. That did not used to be the case. It used to be all like relative stuff and width and like you didn't have to worry about it. But once Flexbox came out, they actually added Flexbox on top of it. So what the stuff I'm about to show you is basically a shorthand for a lot of the stuff we've been doing of like making stuff Flexbox, giving it a width, and then like having it stacked together. So it's kind of the same thing, but in a little bit faster and different way. which is why we still want to understand the basics. But here's a quick example of like what we can do with this. Basically, like we were walking through, right, a document, and we wanted to have 3 columns, right? We wanted to have feature 1, feature 2, feature 3. Maybe we could do that with this as well, right? So we already know that we have our container, which we do need to have. But then we have this new idea of a row, and we have columns. And so let's go ahead and create that ourselves and try and replicate this and make like a lunch menu, I guess, for this right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down inside of my container. And I'm going to call this lunch menu right here. Okay. It's pretty good. It's a little ugly, but that's fine. I'll use some Bootstrap classes as we go here. There's a lot of what we'll call like utility classes in here, which means like for spacing, for different things. Remember how we used to go like have to write a class here, like heading, then go up and do a style, and then we have to do something like center text, and then margin top equals 2 rem, stuff like that. Here, there's actually some shorthand we can use. If we just want to add margin top to it, we can do M for margin, T for top, and then dash like 4, and it'll add that to there, and that's the shorthand for it. That's like an advanced thing where it's just like, I know I want to do this, but I don't want to write a new class to do it. Again, you should know how to do it the other way, but the whole point of Bootstrap is just shorthand to move faster, and that's one of the things it throws in for free. And I think if we did something like text center, maybe, would that work? Yep. Okay, I just guessed that, but it kind of works that way. We're like, is these short, what we call like utility classes, where if I wanted to make something flex rather than calling it like heading and then going up and making a class called heading, calling it display flex, I can just put something like flex, save it, and that like would make it flex, which I don't want to do, but good to know. Okay, so I have my lunch menu here. What I want to do is create a grid underneath my lunch menu, and then have like 3 different options, right? And so let's go ahead and do that. What we want to do is we have our container that everything is inside of, but Bootstrap works in rows. And so what I want to do is create a new div, and then I want to add on my class attribute, and I want to put just row, call this a row. And you notice that this lines up very much with what we have here. And basically Bootstrap works off rows and columns. So we have rows that go left to right, and then we put, if we want only 1 column, like everything together, we have 1. If we want it to be split 50-50, we would have 2 columns. Or we could adjust how big or small each of those is. If we wanted 3, we're going to have in this row, left to right, 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. So that's what we're going to do here, just like the example. I'm going to have a div with the class of col, C-O-L. I'm just going to keep it without the dash SM for now. I'll explain why in a second. Let's call this one, we can actually put in like a heading. So we'll just do strong, and we'll just say like pizza. Pizza is dope. Let's go ahead and copy this a couple more times. And then say like burgers, burrito, sure. Sure. And then we have, I don't know, apple for the vegetarians. Cool. All right, so now we have these 3 things, and you notice just like we had a 1 row, 1, 2, 3 columns, now we also have 1, 2, 3 columns. And if we look at these in our inspector, you can see that we have this one here where the call is taking up a third of the space, third of the space, third of the space, and all our stuff is in there together, which is pretty nifty. If we wanted to add some margin bottom to that, we could do that with MB dash, say like 8. Nope, not really at all. For padding. Nope, didn't do anything. Let's see, like that.
No, didn't work at all. That's fine. Yeah, no, these are all like what, using flex, relative position. What are these using? I'll display flex. That's fine. I wish there wasn't so much stuff in here. What can we do here? We add a little bit of padding at the bottom. Oh, this one rem. Oh, it does work. Sure, we'll do that. So if we want to, the shorthand for adding padding is just P, and then if we want to add it all the way around, we just do -4 or -8, however much we want to add. Going to add a little bit of padding. Cool. So now we have our column for pizza, our column for burrito, our column for apple. We've just put it as col for any size column, which is, you can see right here. That's just going to make them equal width, right? So just however many columns you put in, if you put in 2, like, so let's go ahead and try deleting one of these. We take this column and delete it. We're just going to have these 2, and they're going to each take up half of the space. If we have 1, it's just going to take up the space. If we have 3, it's going to, they're all going to be equally spaced using flexbox. Now, what if we want to have like pizza take up more space, burrito take up a little bit of space, and apple take up more space? Well, we could do that. Or actually, let me show you one other thing first. If we move this down, it is going to insist on each of these taking up space until we go like really small. So like these are not going to stack by default. They're just going to take up each an equal portion of the space in a row, which may or may not be exactly what we want to do. So the way that we can get around this in a Bootstrap row is by making it not just a call, but a call dash SM. It's the example we're using here. And what this will do is it will, like on small screens, basically stack it together. So it'll take up equal space on larger screens, but on smaller screens, it'll collapse it down. And it's just kind of giving us a table here explaining the difference here. So it looks like the max container width, you can see, again, there's none here. It's not going to break down at any breakpoint. But here at this 540, it looks like, if we have dash SM, it's going to break it down to be more mobile friendly. So I'm going to do this here. We'll just do it by hand. Dash SM. Sweet. So now you can see on a small screen, they're all going to stack, but on a big screen, they're going to take up 3 rows. That's only once we hit that. You can see, I think it's 540. Oh, it looks like a little bit earlier. But it's going to give us a little bit more of a mobile-friendly option, which is pretty nice. But what if we wanted to have this middle burrito spot? Let me get these each backgrounds too, so we can kind of see what's going on. So I'm going to create some new. Do we actually have background classes built in? I wonder. I don't actually know. We might. It might be colors. Background color. Cool, we do. So I'm going to give one BG success. We'll make the pizza dangerous. Make the burrito a warning. And we'll make this one success. All right, so there you go. See, just like how we have this here, if we apply this class that has this background, this was just a shorthand for us putting in this background color. That's all it's doing, just a shorthand for that. I bet we also have one for text color up here. Yeah, it looks like if we do text dash white, it'll make it white. So let's go ahead and just grab this. We usually don't want to put this on the whole row, but I'm just going to grab container, put it there. I think we'll be okay. Okay, so we can kind of see that now. So we have our pizza, burrito, and apple. What if we want to have the burrito take up more space? Well, the way that we would do that is we want to go to our layout, go to our grid, And the other option we have here is basically, there you go, column 1. So you see how we're setting a column width with this one by doing col-6 instead of just a column? That's basically what we're going to want to do here. There's several ways we can do it depending on whether you just want it to take up more space than the others and have like, imagine we have like 12 kind of columns here. How many of those columns we want it to take up? So we could do that here. Take us out of this. So if we, in this burrito one, it's just called SM. If we say call 6, you notice it's going to take up more space, and these other two will accommodate. I can also go to this one and say call 1. It's really going to take up a small amount of space. I can say this one, 2, and it's going to take up a different amount of space. Or if we just leave it as call SM, it'll handle that as well. I think the other thing it'll allow us to do is we can actually kind of combine those two and say, hey, I want this to be called SM3, or this one call SM1. I'll still do it. And it'll collapse down in a more friendly way on mobile, but we also have on that larger screen, it's taking up less space. So we can really combine all these things, they all work together. And so we can have, hey, just an equal space thing. Hey, I want to take up a little bit more space. Hey, I want this to be auto on a medium screen. They kind of all work together. You'll have to like play around with this a lot, kind of figure out exactly how it's working with your layout that you want. I think SM3 is just fine. I think, am I doing this right? Because do you need call by itself or both of these? I think it's fine to do it that way. That's how they do it. So this is how you could take something and like set different widths, do different layouts. So you could imagine we could do like a sidebar layout, right? Let's like pause the apple for a sec. And maybe we just want this one to take up 3 and this one to take up 9. All of a sudden, this looks a lot like our sidebar layout, right? If we were to change the width and have this go on down all the side, make these stretch all the way out to the sides, we'd basically have, using Bootstrap, a sidebar layout that would do this and stack when we done the small size. So that's the gist of using Bootstrap for layout. I think we're about at the point where we can take a quick break. Before I do that, any quick questions while it's fresh in mind on what we've covered right here with Bootstrap Grid and using Bootstrap components? Nothing yet? Cool, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, stretch your legs, and then we'll come back here and play around some more with Bootstrap and Netlify. Cool, so I'll set a timer and I'll see you in 10 minutes. Yeah, no snow. Yeah. What's the matter? But okay.
Yeah. I must have missed something. I can do it.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. I can't count your brain. So what are we trying to do here?
I'm trying to get this
Mm-hmm.
for somehow piece of all this.
Oh, got it. So you only want to have one row and 3 columns inside the row. It's okay to have another row there. Yeah. So like if you wanted one row on top of it, another one on the bottom, which actually we should do in a second. Yeah, you want all of them to be inside of the exact same row.
Like, it won't work. Is that way you download it?
Are you talking about the style and JavaScript?
Yes.
Or
I guess I don't. Went to the first Bootstrap page that said get started, and then once I downloaded, so I downloaded it, but I don't.
you probably don't need to worry about downloading it.
Okay.
Because you only usually do that if you're like setting up like a real project.
Okay.
If you're just trying to like play around and do stuff, you can actually. So you go there. And go back to the Yeah, go to get it started. Make that
Yep.
So that, sure. So this link here
Okay.
is like all of their styles. Like it's a giant CSS file.
Okay.
And then this is all their JavaScript. You haven't learned about that piece yet, but like there's a bunch of like more advanced interaction stuff, and they have JavaScript for that. And then the starter template here has that stuff linked to it.
So all
it's
you
actually
need is this
nobody
CSS.
needs to download because they're like
The main
hosting
thing is
these
going to
files.
be
got it.
It's like
the
download pieces you
or
didn't
it's using
use
these.
hosted
But you can
ones.
put these in big nothing else, like all the rest.
You really don't need to worry about that. People that like.
So if you like, without any of
going down, like
Oh,
their own sites
okay.
again, but like that's not.
No, you can actually make your own bootstrap, right? Like if I did that sometimes earlier. Right? Oh, I'm making this text centered all the time. I can make my own
And then you could actually link
and use it like I would have files
yourself,
rows,
and it would be a relative path to your
This is just
computer
like a
rather
way
than
to
its path.
bring it in and have it.
But you can just, if you just use this starter template, it'll work just fine.
Cool. Okay. So when you're using Bootstrap, is it customary to go on? Do you just like know the shortcuts and stuff, or is it customary to go on?
Oh my God.
Using Bootstrap,
You never
memorize.
Okay.
Okay.
If you're using something, you're always using it.
Okay.
Like the whole time.
Okay. So this is the actual process of using Bootstrap.
Copying their stuff,
Okay.
modifying their docs.
If you cover it, I think I'll say it for
It's
the
just-
says.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, you really don't really learn what you learn.
Those are like
is how to
different
get
browsers, renders,
Okay.
stuff like a
What you start to remember is just like.
For more the advanced
Yeah,
they don't
you
all
don't
have
memorize it
support.
really. It's
Except for them, like when we brought Flexbox on, some of the best source, stragglers, original version of Internet Explorer. Like, everyone's supports it now. There's a while when like you couldn't use Internet Explorer. And then they find it.
Okay. Thank
Same
you.
with like Grid, I think. I think there's like old version, like IE11, I think. So this is like a way to like make sure we do
Yeah.
that, but yeah, so
Okay. Like at first I tried only background for the text and then it didn't show up. And then I added those two and it didn't show up.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just
background clip text is like a newer, fancier, like,
Okay.
but it's really cool. But yeah, like that's why you have to be a little bit secure about like.
Takes me literally 5 minutes after my
I'm sorry, man.
I had already been awake for like 30 minutes. And I don't
Already.
think like moving around.
Okay. One more question for you.
Yeah, shoot.
And if honestly, if it explains it on the website, don't worry about it. But I put the container in the wrong part on here. We don't need to fix it. What was the point of the container again?
All the container does is you need that to make if you want to use rows and columns inside of it.
Okay.
And it'll do stuff like constrain the width of everything inside it.
Oh, okay.
There's different versions of it. You see this fluid that takes up 100% of space.
Okay.
That's what it is. Okay. Yeah. So I'd probably say pop in the starter template, put your nav thing outside of it if that's what you want.
Okay.
Then yeah, maybe before you do that, like put it in that container.
Okay. Awesome. And where does the see? Because I put it. I got to the starting.
Put it under your nav.
Okay.
If you want to, so put it on your nav actually. Can you collapse? I guess always.
Is that an extension?
Well, not.
Have you been working?
Put it on the nav tag.
Oh, nice.
And then like right after, yeah, if you started it.
So I started it. I just needed.
That makes sense.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Because I did it wrong at first, and then I went back and tried
I
it.
think you did it right.
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
So what did you put the grid template in here in this container div?
Yep.
Because I stopped after I did that because I was like, if I focus on this, I'm gonna not get what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, I put it, and
Let me actually upload what I have so far.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
If you guys need, you can grab the bootstrap example that we've done so far. What other bootstrap stuff do we need to cover, Zach? We covered forms a few of that. We should try bootstrap. Any other stuff you guys are going to be using more?
It's just really exciting to see how much better.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Xbox was the way.
Just throw in a few more.
You share.
Sounded smart.
Yeah, I think we're gonna try to.
It is recording. If we can
That's
get
it?
the 4-hour recording.
That's a deal.
Yeah, it takes a while to upload that.
It probably, it won't be today for sure. I'll like start the
I was just
upload
curious
today and come back on Monday and see how it's
Right
going.
there.
Yeah.
Got stuck.
Which part did you get stuck on?
It was the original nav bar you had. Like up here, you had your selections.
Okay, I did upload that to Slack as well. If you want to
I
go.
saw that. Okay, I just wanted to see you do it.
Yeah, let's do it again. Yeah, we can do this all day.
I think it was the emblem and then the options that you listed out. Nav options next to nav bar. To the right of that, you have, I think, like home. And then, yeah, top left there.
There on
Oh, wait, never mind. I'm sorry.
I'll probably nuke this and start it. Oh, cool. Yeah, while we're coming back online, I'll give you guys a few more seconds. Get acclimated. Had a really good question. Remind me your name. Selena. Selena had a really great question. Selena's question was basically if she was talking about this page right here. It's got some fancy stuff right here where it's like doing this wavy background text. And one of the things it was using was this background clip right here. And she was asking about these things like this dash WebKit background clip. And she even had one that was like a dash MOZ, kind of like this. It was like a Moz background clip. And she's like, what are these? And the answer is these are like browser prefixes. So what this is basically is under the hood, Safari and Chrome use basically like an engine to power your web browser called WebKit, right? And so Firefox uses a slightly different one that they built, I think, or whatever. But the gist is for most things like a paragraph tag, for styling text color, all browsers render it basically the same. For some of the newer stuff or for certain more advanced CSS features, browsers do not render it the same. And you have to tell them specifically in a slightly different way what to do with it. And some browsers don't even support things. This usually changes as we update things. But like when Flexbox was brand new, like maybe 5 years ago, 7 years ago, I don't know, a while. Maybe it was like just Chrome that supported it, and then Firefox, then Safari. And we actually had like these different prefixes. But you can actually go to the site called caniuse.com and you can say, hey, can I use Flexbox? and it'll tell you, not gap, but just like normal Flexbox. You can use this all the way across the board, but you notice, hey, IE11 has some weird bugs that you might need to look at. But again, that's only 1.39% of all websites, and that depends on your website, stuff like that. But let's look at the one that we have in question here of background clip. Background clip. Okay, looks like that has pretty good support. Yeah, but there may just be some quirks with how you refer that. How you refer to that on different browsers. CSS Grid. Okay, so you can see like CSS Grid, which is like a newer kind of successor to complement to Flexbox in a lot of ways. Again, IE11, sore thumb, most major browsers, it's completely fine. If Opera Mini is really important to you, don't use it. I don't know why that would be the case, but so it is. Cool. So that's that. Okay, let's. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of restart this site. I'm just gonna delete everything, so it's totally blank, and so just so we can cover how to do this thing again. Go away. So again, it's gone here. I'm just gonna go through again really quick because I moved pretty fast. So I'm just gonna do it again, how we set up a new Bootstrap site. So main thing is just search Bootstrap. Cool. We found Bootstrap. We're gonna go here. We're just gonna go get started. Boom. We could grab the CSS on our page if we wanted to get it working. But I like to just grab the starter template if I'm totally starting from scratch because it throws in some other stuff that I usually forget to do, and some stuff I might need later with JavaScript. So, and now it's blank. I'm gonna pop it in, save, and with any luck, hey, there we go. Hello world, we're looking good. And taco, boom, cool. It's looking good. The first thing I'm going to do, again, going through the docs, I'm going to go to my layout. I'm going to go to my grid or overview. What's this say? Yeah, talk about container. There's also a good question about like, hey, what is a container doing? Again, it's kind of like adding some of that default stuff to make stuff look sane and kind of in the middle, which we don't want with our nav bar, but we do want with all our main content. You can also have multiple containers in your project, I believe. So it depends on like what exactly you're doing, right? We don't want this with the nav bar, but we do want it with that main content section box, if you will. We can make it fluid, which is making it take up all the space all the time at every breakpoint, or we can have it kind of have this width at different breakpoints. So by default, the normal container, right, it's not on small screens, it's not going to take up more than 540 pixels. Even on the biggest screens, it's never going to take up more space. It's never going to get wider than 1,140 pixels. So this is probably a good choice most of the time, or container fluid if you want it to take up all the space. So I'm going to do container, my div, class, container, grab it, cut it, go to my closing body tag, paste it, cool. And why does live reload hate me? Let's try it again. Boom. Did I delete something? Yep, I deleted my H1 tag. Okay. Load up. Cool. Okay, we're good. And taco. Cool. Okay, so we got Bootstrap back. Let's go through some of the other, we reviewed the grid system, and so we know how to break things up into sidebars, main layouts, 2s, 3s, 12s, whatever you like. We knew how to look at some stuff, and we can reference that if we want to make things be different on a small screen and break down, a big screen and take up more space. Again, we didn't cover every single use case, but we kind of know where to look, which is the most important part, and we know the CSS foundation, so we really understand why those things are happening, and we can make informed changes as we go. Let's look at the content tab. This is So remember how like I showed you, hey, even just a normal text thing is being styled by a lot of this stuff. That's coming from this, right? It's bringing in some default typography. It has an opinion on what font we should use by default. We can always override it, but it has an opinion. On images, it gives us some classes we can use, like image fluid to take up a bunch of space across the whole element. We can give it image thumbnail to make it really small. And it's giving us some different kind of scenarios that we can do here. So if we wanted to test this out really quick, right, we could do this. All right, putting it in here. We give it a source. Just grab one. And I want a thumbnail of it. Boom, there we go. We got a thumbnail. And if we were to take off that thumbnail class, it would be way bigger. But if we put it on, it's going to give us this tiny thumbnail, which is kind of neat. So it's cool to know that we can do that. What else can we do? So that's images. Tables. So remember like default tables? Like let me go ahead and drop in an example here because we have our table. We're not designing sites in this Space Jam style, but we have our T head, our table rows. We have all these TDs. And this is like a lot prettier than it normally looks. So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy in this example and show you what it looks like. So this looks pretty good. Remember by default, if we disable the CSS here, it looks like this. Remember, it's like all scrunched together. Nothing, you're not really getting anything for free. Bootstrap by default, it'll make this look way, way better. So this looks pretty good without doing really any work at all. It's already a gazillion times more readable. We can have classes on here, and this is really where all this is coming from. Look at this. There's nothing here really. It's just a well-formatted, clean bones of our table. The only thing it has is this class of tables. So I think if we take this off, boom, normal sad table, bootstrap table, looking pretty good. I think we can even do table dash striped and it'll like alternate every other row and make it look pretty good. Look at that, looking real fresh. Again, like I was saying before, I'm gonna keep stressing this, but Bootstrap is not magic. It is CSS you already know under the hood. So if we look at this table, and this table striped, what is it actually using to, bless you, to do this? All it's doing, remember how we learned about that pseudo selector of nth of type odd? That was one of the weird ones, but it was how we could like alternate things. And I mentioned this was a use case. That is literally the only line of CSS it is adding when you do table striped that I know of. And that's how it's happening. You could write this on your own. You could Google it. You could look it up. But this is a nice shorthand if you want to whip up a quick table and have it be striped.
What shortcuts do you use when you disable a line of code?
Mm-hmm. I think this is actually built in. Let me see comments. That's Chrome. So it's this toggle line comment. So if you go in your menu to edit, toggle line comment. So all I'm doing is I'm selecting a little bit right here. And you can do this by going here, toggle it. It'll try and be smart about what you're doing here. The keyboard combination on a Mac is Command / slash. So I can just do this all day. And that's how that's happening. Yeah, you bet. I'm not sure what the Windows combination is, but if you go to edit, toggle line comment, you'll be able to see that here.
It's Control/2.
Cool. Awesome. Control/2. Love it. Cool. So we got tables. We got some good stuff built in. Figures, don't really care. What else do we have? Okay. And then we have just a lot of these components. So you can imagine, right, if we're going into a full application, there's a lot of stuff that we might need because there's nav bars, there's modals, there's setting pages, there's forms, there's all this stuff. It can be kind of overwhelming to style. And we looked at one, the nav bar. That was pretty neat. Let's go ahead and try like a simple nav too, because they don't all have to be crazy fancy and doing all this stuff, but maybe even something like, what can we do here? Just like this base nav. Sure. You can grab this. Again, I want this to take up full space. I bet I could do like a container fluid here, and that might be the recommended way to do it. I don't know. Yeah, probably. But there we go. You see we have this kind of like navigation up here, active links. It's kind of doing what we want, which is neat. If we shrink down, it's not really doing anything fancy, but at least we got this started pretty quickly. It's just an unordered list with some fancy nav styling to make it look a little bit more palatable. So we could say, right, like a dashboard. And this is actually kind of simple. I don't actually love it now that I see it. Let's go back to our nav bar, pick a different one. So we had this fancy one that we picked, which is like a simple brand one. Is there any kind of in between? This one's pretty good. Okay, it's got a few extra links, but it's not going totally off the rails and adding a gazillion things. I like that. Okay, so let's do that. I'm just going to go inside this div and delete all that. I'm just gonna paste in this guy. There we go. So now it gives us some mobile styling for free. We shrink it down, boom, boom. But we also just have these normal links and disable links, stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead. Let's call it mission control. Like a rocket ship mission control app with tacos and motorcycles. I'm actually going to disable this. That's getting really distracting. Okay. Okay, so we got our table. All right, got a little mission control dashboard going. We can learn some of the, again, we have some utility things built in. I'll hop over to that because I want to add a little bit of padding here, something to make this not all stack up against each other quite so much. So let's see if we can do it. If I know what it is generally too, there's a lot of stuff in here. It's probably under spacing, but if I knew I wanted to get to it, I could just go to Bootstrap, start typing in spacing, and it'll give me an overview of what I was talking about with like M for margin, P for padding, and then like this combination of stuff. And it's kind of showing me some examples here. Oh, okay, ML-1 is like margin left in a small amount. MT0 is like margin top 0. P-3 is like padding all the way around. Okay, kind of neat. So another cool thing about this is if you know how to use your dev tools, right? You can go in, you can inspect, and we have this nifty little guy over here where you can just pop on classes. Because all these classes are pre-written, you can use them to kind of like prototype your design and make changes in real time to see if they work or see what would be good. So I know I can do P dash, right, like 10. So looks like not doing a lot. What if I'm just switch it to margin? Not doing a lot. Yeah, I guess it's not going to do a lot because I don't have any width on this. What do I not have on here? Or is there something else overriding it? Padding one. Huh, interesting. So there must be something going on with the specificity that I'm not seeing. Interesting. Huh. But for certain things, if I want to do like what, text red, I should be able to do that, right? No, I can't even do text color red, text color. Come on. Text danger, that's what we call it? Dramatic. Text dash danger. All right, there we go. Drama queen. Okay. Text dash danger is if we want to make it red, or we can make it, any of these other ones. We can make it, well, that was too dramatic. What about text dash primary? Okay, it's kind of cool. But, so we could do that. And then, okay, I want to go add that to my CSS or to my markup. So I can do class, bring it back in once I see that I like it. Text primary. Okay, so that's one way I could do it. The other thing I could do is, oh, I bet this isn't happening. It's because I think it wants me to put this in a row. everything else. So what I should probably have is like a row and this be inside of it. And then I should have a column and this should be inside of it. And even though I only have one thing, it probably wants that all to be in there. And then I wonder if this may still not work, if I did like my P-10. Nope. Nope. Okay. Yeah, never mind. But we've got all our stuff there. What if I actually want to have like a panel here? Because I've seen that in some apps, right? You come up on a new screen, it's giving you an alert. Hey, you got to change your password. You got to do some other thing. We have like some alerts that we can use for this. That's kind of neat. So maybe I can do just like a little primary, and it'll give you the mock-up or the markup and examples down here. So if I just take this one here for a simple primary alert, pop it in. Hello. You can see that we get it right here, and we can mess around with it. We can do what we want. So maybe I actually just want, right, my content inside of here to be inside this alert panel. And there you go. And we got something that's a little bit more styled, which we can do. Is it gonna let me? So I can do a little bit of stuff there. Why is it not letting me to the top? Is it because this nav is fluid? Interesting. Don't like that. But we can always do a little padding on the bottom. So we'll do 8. So at least we have well, is it doing anything? It's doing a little bit. Maybe 5. Oh, okay. Mine. Well, no wonder. I don't use the Bootstrap utilities a lot, so each 5. Okay, there we go. I just was using Tailwind stuff instead of this one. Okay, so we can do it. It's just M, like an M, what? 2, M3, M4? Sure, an M4. So if we go in here and just do M-4, and we're getting that from the spacing shortcut, and this is the same as going in and saying, hey, we want the margin to be 1.5 rem. It's the exact same thing. It's just a quicker way to do it. Cool. So we got 13 minutes to launch. What else do we need here on our mission control dashboard? Let's look. We have all these things. We can actually have cards, right? We can put in a card right here. What else can we have? Popovers, spinners, progress. A lot of these ones, like progress, are not going to be very useful without JavaScript. The reason you do something like this is to bring in some data or to have that data change over time, right? I want to, every time I click on, maybe I have like a to-do list and I want to see what % of my tasks that day I've completed. Well, every time I check one off, I want you to make the progress of this a little bit bigger so you could change the style dynamically using JavaScript, which would be really good. But we don't have to, so just know that you can do that. Something exciting to look at in the future, but you don't have it right now. The things that we have, oh, buttons. So you're gonna use this really heavily. Let's go ahead and create like, oh, a form. That's another thing we'll use a lot. So let's do input group. I wonder what kind of forms it has for us. So let's see. Okay, it has like a full-blown one right here. This one, form controls. Cool, let's do that. So let's go ahead and just grab their base form right here. Then we can go down, go past the table. And again, every time that we're setting something up, so we have our one row here with our alert panel. Let's go ahead and create another row down below. Because everything really, if you're using Bootstrap, should be in rows and columns. So I didn't do a good job here with this one. Let's do a row, let's do a column. And then let's take this whole guy. And just stick it inside of this. There you go. It's pretty much the same, but now it's inside of a row, which will be more important as we add more things around it. All right, so just like we're doing here, we can actually just copy some of this. Oh, nope. Okay, so we want to copy just this row. But instead of having this alert panel, we want to have our form. So we can go in, copy it, and we'll add them right there. All right. So now we did all that. We have this form that's taking up the whole width. If we want to change that, again, we can change it from like a column to say, hey, equal width. Maybe like we just want it to be like 6. Just have it there, only taking up half that space. And then if we want it in the middle, that's a good question. Could we do MX auto? Yep. Okay. So we can use these combination of classes to make it take up less space and be in the middle. Column 6 is just saying, hey, you should only, if there are 12 columns of space, only take up 6 columns of space. And then MX auto is just saying, hey, on the margin, on like, imagine like an X and Y axis on a graph, side to side, Y axis top and down. Can we auto, use our margin 0 auto trick, making left and right auto? Can we use that here to make it snap to the middle, which is something we've already learned as well. So we can do that. And then maybe we just want to add a little bit of margin around it. So we can say margin 4 or margin 3, something like that. And then that'll add a little bit of space around it as well. Let's just take those 3 things, go to our column, add them. There we go. Okay, so we got a form going on here. And you can see it looks a lot better than our forms usually do, right? If we were to disable this, disable Bootstrap, toggle that. By default, it looks like this. Remember, everything is jumbled together. It's really hard to get it to stand out. Looks very vanilla and not very interesting. But with Bootstrap, it's going to give us a lot of styling out of the box. It's going to help us style these, give us some focus styles, make sure stuff kind of stacks well. It's pretty good. And then if we have, we're probably not always going to have these forms that look like just a login type thing, right? We'll have like drop downs and interesting things to select amounts and maybe even multiple select, right? You can hold down and do that. Maybe a text area. So it's helpful to go in here and just see what you can do with these different options, right? That way, if I want to add in just a select, maybe this large select here, I can do that and just know, okay, well, I got to go to my form. And then I have this group here, this group here. So I'm going to want another group right here. And instead of that one, I'm going to go here and just give me this default select. And say lunch order. And there you go. Default select. And I can say burrito, apple, taco. And we can pick from it right there and submit our lunch, which is pretty neat. So forms are pretty easy to go in, and anything we might need, we probably have like a starter that we can use, check boxes, we can throw that in. And using what we already know, hey, we know the different types of things we can put in forms, we know how the tag works, we can go in and see some examples of how it looks nice. And we can use this to build out a good looking form pretty quickly. And where this really helps, again, is where we take ideas we had before, like, hey, splitting things into separate columns and apply it to forms so we can have like a left and right form field here. Yeah.
Is there a way to like auto save whenever somebody fills out a form? Like I know it's my biggest pet peeve on websites sometimes is where I fill out and then like by the time I hit submit, everything's gone.
Sure. Yeah. So the question was, is there a way to like auto save a form? So you're saying like when you come back to that form or like as you're doing it?
I guess like both. So like one is like if it's just like an email and password, like sometimes like if you leave it for too long or whatever, it won't remember. But also like if you're looking at like job applications or something like that, like as you're filling out, like sometimes I've gotten to the bottom before and like
and it wipes stuff out.
Yeah.
Really frustrating. So there's two answers. One, your browser, as long as you have certain things in there, like, oh, type is email, type is password, it'll do some of that stuff for free. Remember, it would kind of like hide your password, or it'll say, hey, that you don't have an @ sign in your email. The browser will do a lot of that stuff, things like remembering things. As long as your markup is correct, the browser will help you like remember when you repeat. While you're actually doing it, because that information hasn't been saved anywhere by default with just HTML and CSS, and you haven't submitted it so it's not on the server, it actually doesn't exist anywhere yet in a permanent form. And so there is a way to do it using JavaScript, which is basically like, let's say I was like how if you're on like Amazon.com and you're logged in, and I go to buy a pair of running sneakers, but I don't check out. That's kind of like halfway filling out a form, right? And it doesn't, every time I go back, it doesn't wipe my shopping cart clean. It remembers what's in my cart. The way it's doing that is by basically using, it's like grabbing that form stuff or doing different things, like a lot of e-commerce sites, or if you're doing something in an app, you can save, kind of like put a bookmark in the stuff that's half done and then bring it back. By using JavaScript and by saving it on the server somewhere. But in order to do that, you kind of have to know who the person is and do some other work. So it is possible in certain situations. And especially like when you get into more apps and stuff, I'm sure you'll cover some use cases with that too. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure.
Really, really cool. Sweet. That's forms. What else can we do? Okay, there's also just a lot of stuff that like, hey, you can totally build it in vanilla CSS, but it's kind of fun and easy to do. And here, like Jumbotron is totally a good example here. So like, let's do this fluid version here. Let's just do the normal version right now. So this is like a pretty neat component that you might use at the top of like a marketing site or something, right? So if we just component it or just grab it, it's already got a lot of this stuff built in, and we could add in, change the button, do whatever we like. Let's say we want to introduce people to our mission control page up at the top. Just make sure we're in our container fluid. Save this. And boom, it's like taking up a lot of the space, right? Let's get this learn more button. If we wanted to change that out, because again, we kind of know how the button works, we can make this a button danger. We did, and it would go red. We can make this a warning, or like a success, and it'll go green. Notice how we have it like large. If we made it small, it would be small. Make it LG for large, it'll be large. So we can like manipulate a lot of stuff really quickly doing this, which is pretty sweet. And we could build all this, right, using Flexbox, using a background color, using font size. But if you just want something quick, throw it up really quick to get started, this can be a great way to do it. I'm gonna check Slack for any comments. Cool. All you people who are watching remote, if you're still around, still feeling good, cracking jokes with Bob, feel free to put in questions here, and I'll try and check it in a few minutes as well. I think we're about to transition into working time. Unless there are any other components we can look at. Let me see what else would be important or helpful for you guys. Maybe modals, input groups, and Netlify. I got to show you guys how to host stuff. Yes.
Just real quick, an actual like real world example of where you would use this, like you said, to get something in the user's hands pretty quickly, but I'm trying to think of like a way that maybe you would, because obviously you want something more catered and specific, you know. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, totally. I think it depends on what you're doing. Like right now I'm working on a side project, and like, what about like this? There's some pages where I probably want to put a lot of attention, right? What about like my settings page? What if I just have to have a place to like update your like email? Do I want to spend hours making a bespoke team settings page for something that only one person's going to use next week? And it'll like, no, I don't. I just want to grab like a template and be like, here's a form thing. It doesn't look like garbage. People can find it easily, but it doesn't have to like look like, oh, Steve Jobs must have consulted on this like settings page. No, it doesn't have to look fancy. And so I think that's where Bootstrap has a lot of value. I think the other thing that I would encourage you to do is like just because you're using Bootstrap to kind of do the structure, Doesn't mean you have to use Bootstrap all the way through, because what you do get a lot is like sites where you can tell people use Bootstrap and only copied and pasted the examples and changed out the content and then did nothing else. If you're really doing this, I would encourage you to use custom fonts instead of just what they give you. Add in, you don't have to use the button every single time to do the exact color, to do all the exact things. And actually, like a lot of the things that make this look, that make this so easy, you can just copy it, it just works. Also make it look very, like people can tell right away, aha, like I saw you, like you used a Bootstrap site because you used this exact Jumbotron thing. And I recognize that component. So there are other ways to do this. Like Bootstrap is one way where you're grouping all the CSS to do stuff. The way that I actually use, like on my sites, is Tailwind CSS, not related to the company Tailwind. So like some designers in Canada, but it's like a similar thing, right? BG White, all these things, but it's basically like they don't include components out of the box. So it's much more like you're just building things like this card would be built by Tech Center, putting all these utility classes on, things like MD-Flex to make it flexible instead of writing a media query. So as you get more advanced and want to speed stuff up, again, all of this is using CSS under the hood, but there are different ones that you can use to kind of pick your flavor of what you like.
Cool.
Yeah. But Bootstrap's like it's probably the most popular one on the internet. Doesn't mean it's right for you, for every project, but it's really popular.
Cool.
Let's look at some other ones. Carousel, cool. Yeah, I don't need it right now. What about like a list group? This is like a really common thing you'll do a lot where you're spitting out a lot of data, right? Maybe I want to spit out a list of users. Having a list group rather than just like a bullet point list could be really nice. So let me grab this right here. Let's go to maybe below that form. And then I'll just give this margin just on the top. Cool. Okay, so you can see we have some stuff here. Maybe this is a list of users instead. It's like Matt, Zach, Susan, Steve Jobs, Kanye. Gang's all here. And this is like a little bit nicer way to do it. Whereas like if we, again, turned off Bootstrap, by default, that is just going to look like a bullet point list. But if we turn on Bootstrap and use this, all this class really is this list group and then list group item. It looks a lot nicer. And if we were to add like a little, maybe like a round photo next to each one, and then maybe we put a little link or button off to the side, all of a sudden this looks a lot more professional, a lot more app-like, a lot more user-friendly than if we just had like a bullet point list, which technically like, it does communicate the information, but not in a way that's very helpful, beautiful, or usable. That makes sense. And then as you keep in mind, like be thinking ahead, once I have JavaScript, the ability to tell, oh, maybe I want to like grab the current selected user and make that active, right? I can look at some of these classes like, I think this active or this like disabled class. And I can imagine once I learn a little bit of JavaScript, things that I want to be able to do. Okay, Matt is teaching right now. I want to add the active class to his. Cool. And then, oh, Steve Jobs is not available to teach right now. And so we're going to disable his entry. And you notice it graded out a little bit. And so there's some cool stuff we can be thinking through in the future. Okay, once I do have the JavaScript to act as those muscles and change things dynamically on the page, what kind of things would I like to change? And how would I represent that to the user? So pretty neat. Let me see if there's anything else. I'll show you a modal really quick. Modals are really easy to overuse. This is like when you click a button and something comes down. Maybe if you're like deleting your account or something, you might want to do something like this. This is one of the components that is using JavaScript under the hood. Because again, something is changing dynamically on the page. You need JavaScript to make that happen, to add that element, remove it off the page, transition it in. But it's also working closely with CSS where on the page will it appear? What will it say on it? That's HTML. When it glides in beautifully, that's actually using CSS transitions, which we haven't talked about a lot, but it's something that you can do once you're doing web animations. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and it gives you some examples that you can use, right? You have the button to trigger it, the modal to do it, and then all those script tags at the bottom that we imported in our template are what is enabling that to happen. So don't worry too much if like a lot of this doesn't make sense for what you're doing right now. Once you learn a little bit of JavaScript, you'll be able to come back to these Bootstrap components and be like, oh, with what I know now, I can do so much more. So just know that you can do it. Maybe play around with some of the demos. And keep in mind that everything you're learning in this framework kind of like stacks on each other, right? So we saw how to do grids on your whole page. Guess what? You can do a modal and do a grid inside a modal. You can do a grid inside a list group. You can do a grid inside of, so all these things work together, and you can get some pretty creative things, even out of a template that's kind of done for you. Okay. Last things. I'll show you how to launch your site quick, because that's pretty important. Grab any questions from Slack or elsewhere. And then I'll just set you guys loose for the last few minutes doing some workshopping, trying to build out an Instagram clone. So, okay, let's say we have our site done here. We have our index.html. I can reveal this in my Finder. And yeah, it's just all in this one file here. Maybe I have a CSS one too. Great, that'd be nice. What if I want to get this online so other people can find it? At its core, here's the thing, is like putting a website online is not as fancy as it sounds. It's literally just putting it on a server that the internet can see, right? So like right now you're serving those files locally, just on your hard drive. All we're doing is basically moving it to a hard drive connected to the internet that like you pay. Sometimes it's free if it's not very expensive. Sometimes it's more money if it's more complicated, doing heavy lifting. But it's just a server that people can find on the internet. And then like connecting a domain up to it or something like that to make it easy for people to find by not having to type in a bunch of numbers, really. So one easy way to do this for what we call static sites, right? It's not kind of doing a lot of heavy lifting on the back end. It's not processing a lot of stuff, right? Like Instagram on the back end has to like upload all your photos. It has to store all your photos. It has to make sure that they have all the right sizes for all your devices. It has to do all kinds of crazy stuff. If you just have a quick HTML and CSS website, it doesn't have to process anything. It just shows up and says, hey, here I am. It's like a paper flyer on the internet. So that's very inexpensive to host. So you can actually, for free, just throw that up on a service like Netlify, and it's totally fine. And so what we can do here, I'll just log into my account. You can log in for free. There's a lot of fancier ways to do this. You learn about a lot of them as you kind of get in and start using things like the command line and GitHub and all that good stuff. But for now, what you can do is if you go in, you scroll to the bottom, it says, hey, want to deploy a new site? Just drag and drop your site folder here. So what you can do is just make sure you have all the files in your folder together. Take your folder and then just drop it over. And so it's going to say, hey, it hasn't been deployed yet, and now it has been. It took like 2 seconds. It wasn't very big, right? So if I go ahead and click this, it's my same site, but now if I share this in Slack, all of you guys can click that and access to it. And if I wanted to, I can go in, I can change the domain so that I add my own custom one. So like if you look at my sites here, like my site that I use for mattwoods.io right here, this is just a static site that I have on Netlify, right? And I coded it locally, and then I put it here, and I added some domain settings right here so it knows what to look. Like this is the exact same thing, mattwoods.netlify.com. But the one that people will find is mattwoods.io. So this is just like a thing I bought, plugged in the instructions from Hover or wherever you buy it from, and then just plug it in Netlify and go. And it's free to host, and it's not too bad. And so that is one way you can get your site up pretty easily and get in front of other people. So that's Netlify. There's a lot of other stuff you can do with it. There's a lot of other stuff that you'll be able to do once you learn a few more tools. But that's kind of, if you just want to get your whole folder up, just like it is on your local computer, that is the fastest, easy way to do it. Any questions about that?
Now with them, can you use like Mongo since it's just a file?
Nope. So it's only going to be your client side stuff. So if you have something, if with JavaScript you're able to access stuff from Mongo, and you have Mongo hosted somewhere else, you can do it. So what he's talking, the question was kind of like, hey, if you have like a database and other things more complicated, can you use Netlify for this? And the answer is no. Like where you could do something like DigitalOcean is like a place where you can buy fancier servers that have like databases built in, stuff like that. Those are the kinds of places you'd want to go if you wanted to have like a database and other stuff. What Netlify is really good at is really just static site hosting. So stuff where it stays the same and it only changes once you make a change and then re-upload the whole thing. Another question over here.
You pretty much answered what I was gonna ask.
Okay, cool. Yeah. There are ways that you can still make it smart using JavaScript, and basically use some stuff that you'll learn about later, where like you may not even need a server and you still get some of the benefits like you have one, and you call that like serverless, right? Where it's doing the work of a server but without a server. You don't need to worry about that right now. Just know like you can do a lot of cool stuff with JavaScript, way more than you could even like 5-10 years ago. So it's a really good time to be learning this stuff, and there's a lot of cool stuff to do. Any other questions about getting your site up? Or I think we can take a break, 5-10 minutes at your leisure, and then I'll be going around. I'm sure Zach's free. You can help each other. But what I want us to do is just build a clone of Instagram, right? So I want us to go through and learning what we have now, using Bootstrap, using Flexbox, using CSS, using the grid system, using components. I want to see before 1 p.m. how close you guys can get to the Instagram desktop experience, which admittedly is like the worst Instagram experience, the desktop experience. No. But granted, can you do that? Can you get it to be mobile responsive, right? So that it scales down, you can still use it, but it still looks good when you scale up the screen. Yep, looks like no questions from Slack. So I'm gonna set the timer. Actually, I'm not even gonna set a timer. Take a few minutes if you need to, get a drink, and then just get to work, build a new file from scratch. I'll be going around whenever you get stuck. People on Slack, feel free to reach out, and we'll just go for it.
Yeah, it went by so fast. It did go by fast.
6 weeks.
Back before we switched to like the more smaller modules.
Yeah, when you took it, it was longer for sure.
What?
When he took it, it was
The 8 week?
longer, but it was more stuff, right?
I think so.
But then
Yeah,
JavaScript
now
was
it's
like-
like.
I know.
So,
Because I think like HTML was 1 week, CSS was 1 week, right?
yeah. And then JavaScript.
Let's get started, okay? Yeah, if you guys get stuck or questions, feel free to just flag me down. I'll just be one.
Do you know their Instagram passwords?
Yeah.
That'd be super helpful.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I didn't think about that. So what I say is, like, even if you can't pull it up in DevTools, I'll just keep this up here, and you can at least get started on the basic layout. Yeah. I'm not really interested in you making it like exactly like Instagram, whereas like make your own Instagram clone. So like maybe like it has a feed, it has cards, it has an app bar, maybe it has a sidebar, and then see how far you can get with that. I think you could get close enough on that. Let me try to zoom it out so you can at least see more of the. There you go. You can kind of see the caption here.
Some music.
Do we have music up?
Oh, I guess you're on.
Where's the audio actually coming from? I guess it's just for this room. What do people do?
Let music.
Classical station.
Get some classical going on in here.
Safe. There's not gonna be any birds or anything.
Some Bach.
Yes. I'll probably fall asleep.
Oh, yeah. Yes, because usually an image tag, you're wanting that to be in the flow of the document. Whereas like if you're doing a background, like you don't really want that in, it's not really the image or positioning, it's the div, right? So let's say it's like a section on a homepage, right? Where it's like this one right here, where it's like an image in a card, you'd want to use an image tag, right? Because like I can see where the image is. Let's say we're doing like a careers page, like okay coders, and we want to make like a big welcome section that takes up the whole screen, and then we want to put some like hey welcome, join okay coders. Like we want to use a div to take up the whole space and use CSS as instrument, and then like the background image. So it's not really about the image, it's about the hero section. Right? And like if we just happen, we can make that blue, we can make an image, whatever, but it's not really like we're not positioning the photo, it's like this background. Right. Yeah, I'd say like if you're using, yeah, it really depends on whether the image is supporting some other component. That's how I think about it. Like, oh, is this just kind of like maybe like on Airbnb, right, where it's like showing photos of different trips, those types of things. Like, you could have both on the same page. It depends on kind of like what the focus is of like the phone, if you like, right? If you took all the styling away, would this be a div? It would be. That might be a good way. Is that helpful? Yeah.
This time, but I started by the nav bar with Bootstrap and I copied the code, but this is how it's coming up.
Okay. Let's look at our starter. Did we get all the CSS?
No.
Okay. So let's go back to our HTML. Let's check really quick. Let's scroll to the top. Okay. So do you remember? You remember the very first step we did when we set up Bootstrap? Okay. So if you ever forget, let's just go to the home page of Bootstrap, and we're just going to that getting started. Let's walk through the instructions. This happens all the time when you're using something, you've used it 1,000 times. But it's like, okay, this is probably some quick start stuff we might have forgot. We can do HCSS. Another thing to do is like the starter template. So it looks like you made your HTML from scratch. You might just like start with this, and that already has the body tag. And if you use this, usually if there's a starter like that, I like to use it. I'll forget little things like there's that one like viewport thing. It's really important on mobile phones, and I haven't used it in like any of the examples. Gotcha. But like
So
if you're
now
doing an
if I
actual
just copy it, it should go. Like that. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Now, one quick thing to remember is that container class is really important. So I would make sure, like, I probably should have this more, but you really do want everything in Bootstrap to be in some kind of container. Whether that's a container fluid, which just means it takes up all the space, I think you want for your nav bar. So I'd go ahead and like, before you put that in, maybe like put in your two containers, maybe one that's a normal container for stuff like Hello World, all the content, maybe one that is container fluid that just has your nav bar. And have that in. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because otherwise what may happen, and I could totally see myself doing this, I drop in the nav bar, I forget, come back a couple days later, and I'm trying to use like rows and columns in here. I'm like, why are these not working? Well, because rows and columns have to be in a container class. So if you don't have that and you forget, it's a lot easier to add it up front than to just add it later.
Fair enough.
Great question. Squiggle lights real quick. Yes. Where they got them from.
What?
I wonder where they came from.
Yeah.
Anyone else have questions or just want to talk through what they're working on? Is that your go-to, the sway?
Oh yeah.
You ever watch Hitch? Oh, really?
Right here.
Gotta keep it right here. The movie.
Oh, the Will
Yeah.
Smith movie?
Yeah, the Will
Yeah.
Smith movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I showed it to my wife like a couple weeks. She'd never seen it. And my head about exploded. I was like, how have you not seen Hitch?
Nobody's on TV like at least once a week.
Is that good?
I don't think it's that good, but it's like for.
It's
What?
does that mean it's good?
Oh no, that's not what I meant. No, I just mean it's good.
I think it's. I don't know if it's good. I enjoy it more than I should. And it's like the only thing I like Kevin James in.
Yeah.
Period. Like I hate him in everything except Hitch.
Yeah.
And I find that movie completely delightful. And I don't like rom-coms normally either, but
That was like his breakout movie.
so.
Yeah.
Wasn't he in that sitcom? Oh, he's in the sitcom where he's the answer video.
Sounds like a Kevin James thing.
Oh, yeah, King and Queen.
That makes sense though.
When I tried to do that, and so this is the thing from. I don't know if like I need to.
Yeah, so let's bring it back to where it was before again. Just back a little bit. Maybe like Command Z.
It's probably gonna be a lot.
Yeah, that's okay. Like, just bring it back to where at least like it's not all collapsed in. It's kind of hard to okay. So we got that. So from this state, what is the main change we want? And then on top of that, it seems like we also need like a search bar in the middle, maybe.
Yes.
And then something. Okay, so if you're doing this without Bootstrap, how would you get the logo on the left, the search bar in the middle, and the other ones on the right, in terms of your markup, and then what CSS approach would be?
I don't know. I'm really.
That's okay.
I was trying to troubleshoot it back to the website I was doing. I was trying to make medium. Their website was pretty like basic as far as layout, but I just struggled trying to get it.
Totally, yeah.
Which was the same issue. I wanted just the image of the logo, and then I wanted to move my elements over, and I just see different site references of it. I just couldn't figure out how to do it.
Totally. Yeah. So remember we talked about like grouping and then placing, right? Because we got to group it and make sure we have the right group in our HTML
And
before
then
we can place.
CSS tell them.
Exactly. So if we had to have those grouping of logo, search bar, link, what would that look like in our HTML?
Yeah. So I know like usually like the navigation is I feel like maybe
Okay, yeah, and that might actually be easier, honestly, because then in order to use Bootstrap, you have to know all the weird Bootstrap stuff it's doing. I think if I were going to use an nav bar, I'd probably have to, you have to make sure the whole thing's in a container, like a container fluid, and then I'd have to put in somewhere in the nav or around them now, like a row, and I'd have to do something only on one screen that would like break it up into like this third, this third, this third.
Which is like a lot, honestly. 'Cause honestly, if you have just a few of those groups in Flexbox, you can do this much easier, right? Yeah. Because you have the Flex parent, and then by default it's left to right. And then if you have group, image inside of it, group, put search bar inside of it, group, if your links inside of it, and then each of those groups you say space between, it's already done. And then that's all you have. So that's great. The good thing is you don't have to remove Bootstrap from doing it. Bootstrap does not require you to do every Bootstrap. You can still do that part your way. Yeah. And then you can still use parts of Bootstrap on other parts where it makes sense.
Okay. My goal is to
Okay. Take a crack at it and feel free to check in a couple minutes. Anyone have questions? So image. So if we're looking at markup, right? If we're trying to put an image in there, there's two ways that we can. Do you remember the two ways that we can do that? Because I think you're trying to mix and match two ways, and so you're like halfway to either one. We just got to pick a strategy.
Okay. There's the one where you say you had to go to that one website.
Oh, there's a third way. Yeah. So we could do that. And just put like an inline SVG. That works.
Okay.
We can do an image and just have like source equals and then the place to find the image. Or we can say, hey, a div, and then the CSS say the background image is. Like any of those will work. It depends on where we're doing it. Is it going to be like in a link?
Like I wanted like right there, the size.
Got it. Besides the person. Yeah, so I would probably either do an image or an inline SVG there. Honestly, I go ahead and try image. Even if you do, if you link to an inline SVG,
right?
It'll still work. You can't do a lot of fancy styling on it, okay. But you don't need to worry about that right now. So just treat it like an image. I try that first, and then if that doesn't work, grab me again and like let's keep working. Great question.
What was that site that you found all those icons? Awesome.
Font Awesome is one. Where else can we find images? That's one I like. Yeah, so I like to use one called Heroicons.
I know, I copied it too, and I put it in.
Heroicons UI. This is by a designer I like. So he has some here. I'll just go ahead and share them.
Was it show the image to you?
Yeah, Font Awesome is great. Font Awesome, you do have to set up some stuff. I think, actually, let me see if some of these are included in Bootstrap, because I think they used to be.
I'm sorry.
It can be yeah, so here's like some links to different places to get. There's so many ways to do icons. I'll share another one I like. This is another one I like. Some free SVG icons. But yeah, there's no right or wrong way. There's just different ways to do it. If you're having trouble using those, just give me a shout.
Okay, I need help again. So I tried to get this house icon.
Okay.
All I did was just copy this and put on HTML, but right
Yeah. So with stuff like this, just like with Bootstrap, we had to link to some extra styles to get it to work. Same thing with Font. So I'd look for like a get started page or some kind of start. Yeah. It's probably gonna give us some. See, it's so much less user friendly to get started. Yeah, so it's making you have to give them your email, so don't use it for free. I do not like that one bit. That's why I don't recommend Font Awesome anymore by default.
Oh, it literally says send kit code. Okay.
Yeah, it's they're trying to make money. I get it, but come on. Okay, yeah, this little script time that you put in the head. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's all needed. No, that's great. Oh, nice. Is it even a font? Is it? They have to be an image. Yeah, I tried. I guess it is a font. Yeah, that's funky. I would just do like your own knockoff. Okay. Just find something that's I can find. Yeah. Yeah, you can go to Google Fonts and just look through it. Hey, what's this? Okay. Yeah, I focus more too on like the layouts before you get to. Usually, like if you can get the big layout parts figured out first, and yeah, the other stuff will go faster for like figuring out fonts and other stuff. Yeah, because you can always go.
Yeah. Working on it. One of them is tiny.
Yeah, I can click it.
Thanks.
You're working on?
I mean, I think it's super good.
Right. So they're trying to do a different kind of thing with various, right? So I think we know how to do this stuff. Let's try going through this together. Go back to your now. Okay, so we're trying to do is like have a group that is on the left, a group in the middle, and a group on the top. Okay. So what do we still need to make quick the bones? So it looks like we have a div for like the whole map together, which is really good. Right? And it looks like we have a group for the right hand side. We want to have 3 groups, one left, one center, one right. What else do you think we need to add or change? So I think we want to keep the wrapper for the whole thing. But I think you're totally right. What if we added one for center, have links inside of it? What if we added one to the left and have links inside of it? Or and then let's just make sure that we, while it's fresh on our minds and while we have the indentation and everything, let's go ahead and pop that open and put it inside of it. Maybe even open and close it, but we're going to want something inside of it, probably, right? Like that logo. One tip that I found really helpful too is like when you have stuff like that, it gets really easy to lose track of where you want what you said well. So I'd like to have all my, one thing that might help is if you have on this line, in this indentation, only the children that are ready to use this, and then all the links that are inside of it, like it is right here. So if you have it inside of it. So if you did that with this one, if you go ahead and pop both of the opening and closing the sides out of the same way. See how much easier this is to read. Yeah. Yeah. Well, those ones aren't saying anything, but if we put it in the center here, and then these back down so it starts and ends on the same way. Right above. See how it starts and ends? Pop it down. See, and now inside of it, what if we put our links? And then indent a little bit. If we need, or whatever we're going to have in there, like start, end it, underline below, and then indent. So it wasn't extra, right? That was terrible. This one here that opens, and then it closes down here. This one opens, and it will close right here. This one that opens here and closes here. This one that opens here and closes. So we should have, each one needs to have both opening and closing. So if we removed it, right, it would keep going until it lost it, and then your whole layout breaks if you're missing it. Which is why if we actually move that closing type down here, it might be a little bit easier. So we go ahead and enter. Move that down there, and then we move those, let's just say for now, move those 2 links inside of it. So they'll be on the left-hand side for now. Just make sure they're indented just right. And then, yeah, maybe even we can put a space on that and then remove this. And kind of see how we can see each of those 3 groups really clearly. We can see where the whole thing starts now. Yeah. Does that feel like a little bit easier to read than when it was like some of those on 1 line and somewhere on 3? And this way, like if you were to remove one of these, you might see really easily, oh, one of my tags is broken. This is why like indentation is really. So now that we have that on there, do you have any? So do you understand everything that's going on? Okay.
But I wasn't sure, like, they have these, but I think there's more. You don't need all of them.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Do you want to lay everything out using a float-based layout, or you want to use something like FlexBot? Okay. I would encourage you to take a step back And rather than use, because floats are, they're gonna honestly make good. There's a reason a lot of people don't use it. It's because like they are using the example in this case, but I really recommend using it. I know float splash is ready. I think that's okay for now. Maybe what we could do is what if we, how do you feel about the bootstrap stuff that we use with the column?
I guess I wasn't
Okay. Okay. Let's just try leaving all this for now. No, let's just try, let's see what it might look like to
I think
started. I think I'm read this. Grab this. So in your, yeah, I just go into it like it's an exercise. In the head. And then you save that. You can go check the site. I think it's updated. Yeah. Working. And so now we can use the bootstrap thing and lay out things different. Let's go back to that. Go to that layout. Start with the overview. Just to kind of see what's going on. If you read the container, it's required to use the okay, you need to have a container in order for the stuff. Let's go ahead and add a container. How about if it's a normal? Just a normal. Yeah, so how much is inside of our body? Yeah, let's just add a new one. This is div with a top. Go ahead, tab, and it'll, yeah, just go ahead and enter, and then what you're gonna want to put everything inside of that. Yeah, everything.